In Arizona, a shipment of money vanished into the high desert, along with the 2 men hired to guard it. The FBI didn't know if the guards were participants or victims of an ambush. Answers lay somewhere in Arizona's vast Northwest Territory. FBI agents struggled to piece together scattered clues to reveal the truth.
In Arizona, an armored van loaded with cash failed to reach its destination. Authorities suspected an inside job. When the vehicle was recovered, with the drivers and the cash missing, those suspicions grew even more. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. This well-planned crime required extraordinary efforts to solve. The FBI knew that the smallest detail could make or break the case.
May 24th, 1977, Phoenix, Arizona. The security company transferred $333,000 in cash and coins from their vault to an armored van. 2 courier guards prepared for another day distributing cash to Arizona banks.
Y'all about ready to go?
We've got a problem with this door. I think we want to take a look at it. Let me see.
One guard discovered a problem with the van's side door latch. They would report to the company maintenance garage before they set out. This delay put Cecil Newkirk and Russell Dempsey an hour behind schedule. The day's route included stops from Phoenix, 150 miles north to Flagstaff.
This is van 26 to base.
With the delay, it would be difficult to make all the stops. Banks waited on the deliveries to provide cash to their customers.
Superior Later Security.
By 10:30 a.m., the security company received a call from a bank complaining they had not received their delivery.
Mechanical problems with the van, so it got a little late start. Well, they should be there shortly. You know,
At first, the dispatcher thought the late start explained the
All
problem.
right, we'll keep us informed. All right, bye.
But throughout the afternoon, the dispatcher couldn't reach the guards.
Base Courier 1. Dempsey, you out there? This is Base. Come on in.
By 4:30, the company contacted the FBI. The Phoenix field office broadcast an APB for the armored van to all area police. State and local authorities used the remaining light of the evening to search for the missing van. They found no sign of it or the courier guards. Special Agent Stephen Chenoweth, now retired from the FBI's Phoenix field office, wondered if the guards had driven off with the money.
One of the first things that you do is certainly look at the drivers to see whether or not that might be a possibility as to what had happened, whether there's a driver involvement.
Both of the missing guards were married. That evening, an FBI agent interviewed each of their wives separately. They confirmed that neither of their husbands had financial problems that would provoke them to steal the money. Company officials agreed. Both guards had given 20 years of faithful service. The missing van's route covered a vast area of the state. Authorities had nearly 1,000 square miles to search, and most of that terrain was remote desert. The next day, Arizona Department of Public Safety helicopters retraced the guards' scheduled route. They flew up Interstate 17, north toward Flagstaff, checking all exits. Pilots spotted the van 50 miles north of Phoenix. It had been abandoned a quarter-mile off the interstate in a remote area near the town of Bumblebee. Arizona public safety officers and local deputies cordoned off the area before the FBI arrived. Agents approached the van cautiously. They did not want to disturb the footprints tracked around the vehicle. The armored van's doors were locked. From the outside, there was little to indicate what had occurred.
There didn't appear to be a struggle on the inside, but we had to actually get inside the vehicle before we could really conduct a thorough investigation or examination of the van. And it wasn't until later on that morning that they had brought a spare set of keys out and we effected entry into the van.
The radio was still on. Yet the base had not received any calls for help. The van's siren had not been tripped. A shotgun kept in the van for defense had not been fired, and its safety was still engaged. The guards had not used any of their resources to signal that there had been a robbery. In the back, agents found bags containing several $1,000s in coins, but $293,000 in paper currency was missing. Blood spatter on the carpet and money bags indicated someone had been injured, but agents didn't know who.
Your biggest fear at the time, of course, is for the safety of the guards. Money can always be replaced. Your life cannot. And so we were certainly concerned about the guards' fate.
Amongst the footprints in the dust, investigators noted a separate set of tire tracks behind the van. Evidence technicians captured the tire prints with photos and plaster casts. Agents concluded that it was unlikely the guards had been overpowered by a single perpetrator.
The location of the van, the condition of the van, and everything that we found at the scene just told us that this was a crime that had been well planned and probably had been committed by more than one person.
Deputy Dale Lent from nearby Mojave County was brought in to assist the investigation. A narcotics officer trained in ground print identification, Lent could reconstruct crimes from foot and vehicle prints. He was one of only 2 trackers qualified to testify in Arizona court.
The first concern was to check the area to see if the guards had been taken somewhere away from the van and something had happened to them. So the first thing I did was do a 360 around the scene, which included checking the road further up.
The guards were nowhere to be found. But on a hill near where the van was abandoned, Lent discovered more tire tracks and footprints. From this position, there was an unobstructed view of the interstate that the guards traveled. Back near the van itself, the deputy found 2 separate sets of large footprints. Based on his observations, Lent concluded that at least one other vehicle and 2 perpetrators had been involved.
The vehicle had come down, backed up near the van, picked up something up, whether it be the 2 guards or whether it be the money. Hard to tell, but I'd say it was the money because it was a trail. It wasn't just one. It was a well beat out path.
Examining the strata of tread prints, Lent deduced that one vehicle had followed the van from the interstate to where it was abandoned. Deeper tracks leading back into the interstate showed that the vehicle had left much heavier than when it came. Investigators believed that, dead or alive, the guards had been taken by the assailants. The FBI turned to the media for help.
We did what we could to keep this on the front page of the news, and we did what we could to make sure that people were aware that we were looking for these guards.
The media reports generated calls from witnesses. Several motorists claimed to have seen the van stopped on the northbound side of Interstate 17 on the morning of May 24th.
They had already been pulled over.
One saw an Arizona Department of Public Safety officer walking towards the van. Other witnesses had similar stories, but details differed. The make and color of the officer's car varied. In some accounts, he was parked in front of the van. Other times, he was stopped behind. Agents contacted the Arizona Department of Public Safety. No officers had reported stopping an armored van on I-17 that morning.
Well, at that point, I was fairly convinced that something amiss had probably happened to the guards, that somehow, someplace, they had been stopped, and they had let their guard down, and that they'd been taken captive. And being that we didn't find the guards in the immediate vicinity, it soon became evident that the guards probably were taken against their will.
The FBI and Deputy Lent searched Interstate 17 for the spot witnesses had described. The tracker found the place where he believed the van had been stopped.
The marks were fresh within the time frame, 24 to 48 hours. You could see where the door was, where somebody got out, where there were scuff marks there on the ground. It looked like, where there had been movement.
Digs and gouges in the dirt indicated that there had been a struggle near the rear of the van. A second vehicle's tire tracks at the interstate matched those in the remote area where the van had been abandoned. Curiously, the same tracks were found further up the road, just in front of where the van had been pulled over. Several motorists even underwent hypnosis to provide details to a sketch artist of what they remembered. Some recalled that the officer at the scene wore a hat. Others claimed the officer had no hat. But none of the sketches produced any leads. The FBI had reached a dead end. Then, on the morning of June 16, 1977, 300 miles northwest of where the van had been abandoned, two men made a gruesome discovery while fishing at Lake Mead. The men discovered a body floating in Debbie's Cove. They contacted the National Park Service. Investigators sped to the cove where the body had been spotted. Local law enforcement joined the National Park Service divers. They pulled close to the corpse. The body was fully clothed. Its head and torso were covered with a canvas bag. An officer retrieved a wallet from the back pocket. The victim was Russell Dempsey, one of the missing armored car guards. The divers searched the area but couldn't find the second guard's body. Not far below the surface, they discovered two sticks of wood connected by a rope.
What do you got? Okay, bring it on over to the boat here.
To investigators, it appeared to be a garrote used to strangle someone. The robbery was now a murder investigation. Investigators still had nothing that could lead them to any suspects. They only knew that an Arizona public safety officer, or someone masquerading as one, might be involved. On the morning of June 16, 1977, National Park Service divers in Arizona retrieved a dead body from Lake Mead. It was one of two armored car guards that had disappeared on May 24th, along with $293,000. The whereabouts of the second guard and the money remained unknown. The county medical examiner determined that the guard found in the lake had suffered a heart attack. He had also been strangled. Investigators believed that a garrote recovered near the body had been used to choke him. A strand of the victim's hair found tangled in the device supported their suspicions. FBI agents traveled to Lake Mead to question people who were familiar with the resort area. Whoever had dumped the body had likely used a boat to get to the deeper water. More than 20 agents canvassed rental shops around the 247-square-mile lake. No one reported any suspicious activity, but agents collected rental receipts in the hopes they'd eventually have a suspect's name to reference. Special Agent Laird Heastand, now retired from the FBI's Kingman Resident Agency, joined the case. He would search for names on receipts any place a traveler might have visited in the area.
We didn't have any good leads on who had committed this crime. And our assistant agent in charge in the Phoenix office decided to have FBI agents check every service station from the area where the armored car was located all the way up to Lake Mead where the body had been transported.
That was a distance of more than 300 miles. Considering all the different routes to the lake, the agents had hundreds of service stations to check. The agent started his inquiries at the station owned by an acquaintance named Stan.
I asked Stan if he had heard anything about the robbery, and he said to me, "I've been waiting for somebody to come to talk to me." And then he related to me that the day after the robbery that he had to take his tow truck up to Lake Mead and pull a truck out of the lake that had backed out into the lake.
On May 25th, Stan had received a call from two men whose truck was stuck at Benelli Landing on the lake. The men explained they had gotten drunk while fishing and backed their truck too close to the water. The owner didn't see any fishing equipment in the pickup, but he did notice drag marks in the dust of the flatbed. It appeared that something heavy had been hauled out of the back.
All right.
Stan brought the two men to his service station. He wrote a receipt and asked for a signature. The customers hesitated before one agreed to sign. The name he used was Mike Poland. The station owner believed he'd be able to identify the men if he saw them again. It was the break investigators had been hoping for. The ease by which he found it surprised Special Agent Heastand.
The first place I walk into, I developed this information. It totally caught me off guard and shocked me. And I said, "Oh boy, this is it. We finally have something that we can start from."
Agents searched for the name Michael Poland amongst the thousands of boat rental receipts collected from Lake Mead. After several hours, they found it. Michael Poland had rented a boat the day after the robbery, naming Benelli Landing as his destination. It was the same spot from where his truck had been towed. Agents returned to Lake Mead, searching for additional evidence between Benelli Landing and the boat rental shop on the opposite shore. Within the breadth of that 4.5-mile span, officers spotted another bag-covered corpse floating on the surface. It was the second missing courier guard. He had been severely beaten before he was drowned. The medical examiner found 2 welts on his chest, consistent with wounds inflicted by a high-voltage taser gun. The guard's personal effects were removed, including a self-winding watch that had stopped at 10:37 p.m. on May 26th. Special Agent Stephen Chenoweth's team redoubled their search for clues at Lake Mead.
Based upon where their bodies were found and the currents and the length of time that we felt that they had been in the water itself, we were able to track back where we thought they may have been put in at Lake Mead.
That area was just 100 yards from Debbie's Cove, where the body of the first guard had surfaced. Divers focused on a ledge 12 feet down that bordered an 800-foot trench. A sweep of the ledge yielded a third canvas bag, similar to the ones that covered the bodies. The bag was sent to the FBI lab for processing. Inside the bag, agents recovered an Arizona license plate that resembled those used on Arizona public safety cruisers. 2 revolvers were also found, but no prints could be lifted from the corroded weapons. Rocks that matched those from Benelli Landing had held the bag at the bottom. Examiners also found concrete dust caked in the weave of the canvas bag. Agents called on Stan, hoping the service station owner could identify a driver's license photo of Michael Poland, one of the 2 men that had hired him to tow their pickup from Benelli Landing. Among 6 photos, Stan recognized the face of Michael Poland. The FBI had finally confirmed a primary suspect. They hoped Michael Poland would lead them to another. In June of 1977, the FBI pursued whoever killed 2 armored car guards and made off with $293,000. Tire tracks and footprints at the crime scene suggested that at least 2 perpetrators were involved. Agents believed one of them was Michael Poland. They hoped surveillance of Poland would lead to another. Though he did not appear to have a job, Poland was spending a lot of money. Agents saw a new motorcycle on the property. The FBI identified a man who visited frequently as Michael's younger brother, Patrick. Patrick Poland had just bought a new car. When the brothers were inside, an agent approached Michael's teenage son and complimented the new motorcycle. The boy responded that his father had recently bought 2 of them, and a lot more. Agents expanded their investigation to include Patrick Poland and subpoenaed the financial records of both brothers. Prior to the armored van robbery, each had severe money problems. Shortly after, their debts had been paid and both had purchased new vehicles. Special Agent Stephen Chenoweth compared their income to their recent spending habits.
We tried to document as much as we could as to how much money they were spending and to what kind of means of support that they had. And the two just didn't seem to mesh very well. And when that happens, and then you know that folks have got access to a fairly large amount of money with no real means of support, that's a pretty good clue to us.
Agents interviewed the brothers' father and photographed his pickup truck. Mr. Poland admitted that his sons had borrowed the truck on the day of the robbery. The father had mixed concrete in the flatbed several weeks before the robbery. Agents took a sample of the dust for processing. FBI examiners analyzed the concrete sample. They compared it to the cement dust on the canvas bags recovered from Lake Mead. Examiners concluded that the dust on the bag had come from the same batch of concrete taken from the truck. Once again, the FBI asked Stan to look at a photo lineup. The station owner could not identify Patrick Poland as the man with Michael.
This isn't the truck. It looks exactly like when I lowered it right down.
But he did recognize their father's truck as the one he towed from the lake.
That's it. That's it.
Positively.
In the early morning of July 27, 1977, agents arrived at Michael Poland's house with a search warrant. Poland claimed to be a self-employed jewelry salesman. He said that on the day of the heist, he was in Las Vegas buying gems.
There 3 days. What did you do on the way back?
Investigators found $12,000 in cash. He claimed it was used for their jewelry business. The agents confiscated numerous receipts. One of them was for a pair of high-voltage taser guns sold to a man named Mark Harris a month before the robbery. A short distance away, agents searched the house of Michael's brother, Patrick Poland. FBI Special Agent Frank Mowry, now retired, asked if he and his brother Michael had been at Lake Mead. Patrick gave a different story than his brother had.
He initially said that he and his brother were there fishing. He was very nervous. He was extremely nervous. He had difficulty in explaining a lot of about his whereabouts, particularly on the day of the crime and the day after the crime.
While Patrick was being interviewed, he received a call. It was his brother Michael.
Yeah, they're over here too.
He urged Patrick not to talk to investigators. The search at Patrick's house yielded a stash of weapons and $16,000 in cash. The FBI tracked down and processed the cars the brothers owned before the robbery.
Different.
The tire treads did not match the tracks found at the crime scene. Examiners found no physical evidence that tied the cars to the crime. Agents visited the gun store where the tasers had been sold to Mark Harris prior to the robbery. The clerk who had made the sale could only remember that Harris was a white male in his 20s. Since the receipt was found in Michael Poland's home, they theorized it was probably his alias.
One of the things the FBI does is try to eliminate all other good logical suspects, and we did this in that case. The name Mark Harris, a rather common name, we had to eliminate that name as being anybody other than the alias of Mike Poland.
Special Agent Mowry searched public records for a Mark Harris between the ages of 25 and 40.
We actually identified literally hundreds of Mark Harrises from vehicle records, motor vehicle records, phone books, and every way we could, and went out to their houses physically, tracked them down and interviewed them, and found that they did not have anything to do with this crime.
With no proof that Mark Harris was an alias for Michael Poland, and no physical evidence tying the brothers to the crimes, agents couldn't arrest the brothers. For the next 10 months, all agents could do was keep careful track of their movements. Special Agent Chenoweth flew helicopter surveillance.
We wanted to know everything that Michael and Patrick Poland did, what they had done in the past, what they were going to do in the future.
Investigators continued to document the brothers' spending habits. They watched as the Polands closed a deal on a gaming arcade. Despite the circumstantial evidence, agents were unable to make an arrest. The FBI had to find stronger physical evidence to prevent the Poland brothers from getting away with murder. In April of 1978, the FBI suspected Michael and Patrick Poland of killing 2 courier guards and stealing nearly $300,000. After 11 months of investigation, agents did not have enough to convince a grand jury to indict. FBI Special Agent Frank Mowry desperately searched for evidence that would strengthen the case.
What we badly needed was physical evidence. We didn't have fingerprints. We didn't have any real good eyewitnesses. We didn't have any physical bits of evidence that could link Mike and Pat Poland to the crime.
The agent focused on the 3 canvas bags retrieved from Lake Mead with the guards' bodies. He checked with over 20 sources in the Phoenix area where the bags might have been manufactured. None recognized the work.
Nobody could even give me a hint of who in town would make such a bag. Some even said, well, they probably came from out of town. So I became very discouraged.
The agent visited the last store on his list and showed the bag. The owner recognized it as coming from his company. It was a custom size with a unique stitch sewn only by their seamstresses. He also identified the specially ordered cord purchased from a Georgia company. As far as the owner knew, his was the only shop in the area that made anything like it.
He said, I will have in my record somewhere a receipt, because somebody would have walked in that door there and they would have said, I need to order so many bags, a certain length, a certain width, certain specifications.
At the Phoenix FBI office, agents pored over hundreds of receipts covering years of business from the bag manufacturer. After almost a week, they found one receipt for 3 custom canvas bags dated 1 month before the robbery. They were sold to a man named Mark Harris.
That's the Harris.
Agents had seen the name before on a receipt for a pair of tasers. They had found the voucher months earlier during a search of Michael Poland's house.
Hold on a second, Frank.
The FBI was further convinced that Mark Harris was an alias for Michael Poland. The canvas bag receipt connected the alias to the murdered guards, and cement dust in the pickup the brothers drove matched dust found in the bags. On May 17, 1978, after nearly a year of investigation, a federal grand jury returned an indictment for murder, kidnapping, and robbery against Michael and Patrick Poland.
Gentlemen, these men should both be considered extremely armed.
The FBI suspected that the Polands would not surrender quietly.
They've both already killed 2 men that we know of. You got your route plan. You're going to be picking up Patrick.
Got it.
We're going to be picking up Mike. Check your weapons. Check your vests.
Special Agent Stephen Chenoweth believed an armed confrontation was possible.
It had to be very well and meticulously planned. The Polands were very violent. They had shown their violence. They had a strong propensity to, commit violence, as evidenced by the guards' fate. And one of the things that we absolutely knew we could not do was to arrest them while they were in the house. And we absolutely had to take them away from the homes.
Agents feared the suspects would barricade themselves in their houses and shoot it out if they discovered they were going to be arrested.
This guy, yeah.
Agents waited for Patrick Poland to emerge.
Yep.
When he finally did, they noticed he was carrying a case for a handgun. tailed him for a safe place to make the arrest. The second arrest team waited for Michael Poland to come out of a real estate office. Once outside, there would be less risk to bystanders if shooting erupted. The first arrest team caught up with Patrick outside the game arcade. The agents intercepted him before he entered the building.
We identified ourselves. Of course, he knew me already from previous contacts, and I told him the time had come and we had warrants for their arrest, and he gave up without any problem. He was armed. He had a .44 Magnum weapon on him and another couple of weapons in his car, but he made no effort to use them.
Agents radioed the other team that Patrick had been picked up. Michael Poland had been in the real estate office for almost 45 minutes. Agents feared that he had somehow gotten word of Patrick's arrest and was preparing for an armed confrontation. They decided to risk entering the building.
Federal agents, please step back. Mike Poland, you're under arrest.
The suspected murderer surrendered without incident. Michael Poland refused to answer questions. He insisted his brother do the same. No fingerprints tied either brother to the murdered guards or the abducted van. Michael remained confident that the FBI case was weak.
In a case like this, you've got a joint venue. Venue certainly lies with the federal government with respect to the actual robbery of the van, and but we also have a homicide case that rests with the state authorities.
Authorities considered their best strategy for a successful prosecution. State and federal prosecutors decided to split the charges. The Polands went on trial for robbery and kidnapping in federal court. Based on the circumstantial evidence gathered, a federal jury found the brothers guilty of the charges on February 15th, 1979. They were sentenced to 100 years.
These were two guards that were very hardworking, very loyal to their company. Both of them had worked for about 20 years for the company. They were actually within weeks of retiring. They were family men, they were good men, religious men, men that had devoted a lot of time and effort and loyalty to this company. And on the eve of their retirement, they were killed.
In November of 1979, an Arizona state jury returned a guilty verdict for murder. The judge gave the brothers the death penalty. The Polands appealed their conviction. The Arizona Supreme Court found that the testimony of a hypnotized witness and the taser gun evidence should not have been used. They also found that the jury had inappropriately discussed the federal trial. The Poland brothers' state murder convictions were overturned. Though agents were certain that the brothers had brutally murdered two men, state prosecutors would not seek a new trial. Because of parole laws at the time, Michael and Patrick Poland would be eligible for parole in less than 7 years. In 1982, an Arizona prosecutor declined to retry Michael and Patrick Poland for murder.
We chose not to because of the exclusion of the eyewitness testimony.
He cited the cost, as well as the difficulty of proving the case with the evidence that had been excluded by the Arizona Supreme Court. United States Attorney Melvin McDonald was outraged that the Poland brothers might get away with murder.
I had followed it by way of the media and had never dreamed that I would play any role in the case until 1982, when it became clear that the ball was going to get dropped unless somebody stepped in. I called the county attorney and volunteered to take the case.
For the first time in history, a U.S. attorney was deputized as an Arizona state prosecutor. McDonald had to resurrect a case that many considered impossible to retry.
There had been 5 years transpired between the time of the crime and the time of the trial. Witnesses travel and move all over the country. Memories start to fade. And so you've got to recreate and present the crime as if it happened a month ago, when you're facing the problem that it's really 5 years old.
The prosecutor wanted to lock down the exact time that the victims had been deposited into Lake Mead and prove it was the same time the Polands were at the lake, so there would be no question the Polands were responsible.
One of the problems with the finding of the guards was that their bodies were not recovered for 6 weeks. The defense, we knew, would argue that they could have been dumped there by the real killers at any time.
Working with the FBI, the prosecutor found a piece of evidence that had been overlooked in the earlier trials. The second guard's self-winding watch. Examiners noted that the watch stopped at 10:37 p.m. on May 26th. That particular self-winding watch would stop working if it weren't moved for 12 hours. That meant that the guard's watch stopped 12 hours after his arm came to rest at the bottom of Lake Mead.
We actually had watch experts take the watch apart to prove that the watch had not stopped because of water damage. There was no water that had gotten into the portions of the watch that controlled its operation. We literally went all the way to Switzerland to get experts there to talk about how much time it would take for a watch that hadn't been cleaned in 5 years to finally unwind.
Forensics experts used this information to determine exactly when the bodies had been dumped into the water. Their estimation exactly matched the time the FBI had established that the Polands were at the lake, getting their pickup towed from Benelli Landing. The prosecutor explained that the brothers had been there to dump the bodies.
For the drama point, I told the jury that while Mr. Newkirk is dead, he is speaking to you from the grave. He's asking you, look at my watch. I'm sending you a message through my watch.
After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury was convinced.
Will the defendants rise?
On November 18th, 1982, they found Michael and Patrick Poland guilty of murder. The judge reinstated a sentence of death.
All rise.
Once again, the defendants appealed the conviction.
It was one of the rare instances where their case went to the United States Supreme Court. And the United States, in a published opinion, a very closely divided court, again affirmed their conviction and sentences.
How the situation...
With nothing left to lose, Patrick Poland agreed to tell investigators and the families of the victims exactly what happened. In 1987, he gave his confession to FBI Special Agent Frank Mowry.
They had actually spent almost a year tailing the van. They knew its route. On those mornings that it went up to Prescott and delivered its money to the banks in Prescott, they knew the exact route. They knew the stops that it made. They knew the times that it did it. They knew everything about it.
The Polands used neither of their own cars in the robbery. They had rented one with cash that the FBI was unable to trace.
We never found it. It was a rental car. And by the time the rental car was taken back, by the time they figured out what was going on, it had been rented out probably 200 times since then. And we were never able to actually pin down for certainty the car that may have been used in the case.
The brothers affixed a light bar and a license plate that resembled those used by the Arizona Department of Public Safety.
Batteries waiting for that CV?
I believe so.
They readied their tools needed for the heist.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we got a spare set.
Good. You got enough ammunition?
Yeah.
The Polans waited more than an hour. The van was unexpectedly delayed. Finally, they saw their quarry. Patrick drove the disguised car while Michael hid under the dash. They stopped the van on the pretext of speeding. Company policy insisted that the guards never open the van doors to anyone, even if stopped by the police. Patrick ordered the driver to step out. When he failed to follow procedure, the driver and his partner were defenseless. The Polans put the guards in the rear of the van. Michael was to drive the van while Patrick drove the car. But when Patrick took off, the van didn't follow. This explained the tracks found in front of where the van was stopped. By the time Patrick reached the rear of the van, Michael was beating the guards. They stunned the guards with high-voltage tasers. The brothers drove the vehicles into the desert near the town of Bumblebee.
Pat.
One of the guards looked as if he had died from the beating. Michael decided that the other would have to die as well. He had a makeshift garrote in his pocket, a cord tied to 2 pieces of wood.
And the one thing we found out about it, of course, is that Mike was obviously the planner, the instigator, and the enforcer, and everything related to the crime, and that he was the one who physically murdered the 2 guards. Pat, of course, helped him at Mike's insistence, but it was Mike who put the rope around their neck and choked them.
Went around the back.
Patrick claimed that Michael had buried most of the money in the desert.
Just had to stop.
At least one of the Polans' relatives knew where that was. Because she cooperated, the authorities didn't prosecute her for her involvement. The money had rotted from the elements in the intervening years. Patrick's confession gave closure to the case.
We knew most of it. We felt better, of course, when the person actually admits it, because there's always some room for doubt until you get it from the heart and from the mouth of the perpetrator.
The courts turned down all appeals for the Polans. The state of Arizona finally administered a lethal injection to Michael Poland on June 16, 1999. After all calls for clemency were denied, Patrick Poland was executed 9 months later on March 15, 2000. Unlike his older brother, Patrick used his final moments to express regret for the pain and suffering he had caused.
now since she's gone. You know, I've had to turn into a
there, you know?
A pregnant woman who vanished.
Kelsey was 8 weeks pregnant, last seen in Pueblo, visiting her boyfriend.
Friends and family would get text replies back, but they said that it just didn't quite sound like Kelsey.
I did have a sinking feeling in my stomach.
This unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car and is seen driving away with the car.
I mean, we're trying everything. Breaks my heart.
Almost 2 years after Kelsey's disappearance, a mysterious message giving everyone hope comes through that Help Find Kelsey Facebook page.
It was saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous?
When Laura responds, a man emails her saying, "Ma'am, please, your daughter is not dead." Kelsey Schelling grew up in the tiny farm town of Holyoke, Colorado.
Holyoke is around 2.5 to 3 hours away from Denver.
It's quiet. It's kind of have your own way. Perfect place to raise a family. Yeah, real good place. Yeah, safe. You're hoping anyway, you know.
Holyoke is definitely agricultural. There's only one stoplight. And if you want to go to a Walmart, you've got to head west to Sterling. That's 50 miles away.
In the early 90s, Kelsey's parents, Doug and Laura, owned the local grocery store in Holyoke. Kelsey and her brother Colby seemed to be living out the American dream. I first met Laura Saxton back in 2016 when 2020 was first looking into Kelsey's story.
You know, she's just always been a little firecracker. Hi, Cal. Hi, Cocoa Bean.
Kelsey. Kel.
She wasn't a kid that wanted to stay up till midnight, you know, where you usually have to fight your kids to go to bed, like at 8:30. That's when she wanted to go to bed. She'd go into her room and pull back her covers, and each animal had to be in a certain place, and everything had to be just perfect.
When she got to be 2, 3, 4 years old, she was feisty. Or you'd try to give her a kiss, and she'd slap me pretty good, so I kind of learned my lesson, you know.
My first impression of Kelsey, she was just an active, outdoors, fun-loving girl, liked to do a lot of sports. When my daughter and Kelsey first met up, their true love was playing basketball together.
I was her coach, yeah. Here she is right here.
Wow. She's a point guard?
Mm-hmm.
When we were still in elementary school, her dad took us out and let us drive on the dirt roads, which is pretty common around here. Kelsey could just laugh about things like that, and her laugh made us laugh. She'd start to giggle, then you would start to giggle, and so that's what made being around Kelsey so special.
Kelsey was a tiny little thing, you know, shorter than me.
The Kelsey that I knew didn't take a lot of crap off of her classmates. You know, she wasn't afraid to stand her ground.
But as Kelsey enters her teens, the Schelling family is rocked when Doug and Laura decide to divorce.
Going through a divorce is really hard as a kid.
Yeah, the split of our parents certainly had an impact on both of us.
Colby.
Colby lived with me, and Kelsey lived with her mom. It was a real dark time for the whole family.
It was a rough age. You know, after her dad and I got divorced, it was just she and I together alone for a lot of years.
She was in a bad emotional place, and I don't think that was due to her character and nature. I think that was circumstantial.
When Laura and I was going through a divorce, she was on antidepressant pills, and she ended up taking like 3 of them or something.
She ended up in the hospital for several days, and it was pretty scary. I mean, I thought we were going to lose her at that point.
She was in a coma?
She was.
I felt like it was a turning point. I mean, when any young school-age kid has parents who are splitting up, that's a lot to take on. She actually stopped doing all of the sports and activities. Seemed like she was more removed.
I think Kelsey was just looking for a change. She wanted to figure out what was her niche.
Kelsey was always, I think, working through, how do I be better? How do I grow? How do I move past this?
Our senior year, she was the prom queen. You don't get that without showing people kindness and respect and truly being embraced by your peers, you know.
Kelsey taught me, she taught me perseverance.
Eventually, she moves on. She goes to Northeastern Junior College. What did she want to do with her life?
She wanted to get a degree in psychology. I think in her heart, she wanted to work with children.
We officially became roommates January 2011. If all of us were bored at 3 o'clock in the morning, she'd be the one to say, let's go cause problems, I guess. Not bad problems. She was just, out for a good time. She loved to have fun. That was her thing to do.
And for a while, carefree Kelsey is back. And then she meets Dante Lucas. He's about to change her life forever.
It was a big deal that she was dating Dante. He was part of the basketball team. They were kind of the popular kids and everything. By the time Kelsey got to know him, she felt proud that she knew who he was because he was somebody to know.
He had dreams of making it big in the NBA.
Kelsey thought she met the man of her dreams.
Marker.
Please say your full name and give us your title.
Lisa Wayne, attorney at law. Well, I had the privilege of being down in Pueblo in the 80s, and I was a public defender. Pueblo's a small town in southern Colorado. Used to be a steel mill town. The steel mill shut down in the 80s.
Pueblo was founded and built by people that came from all over the world.
We're the home of the Pueblo chili. Everyone that lives there is so proud of this town.
Kelsey's love interest, Dante Lucas, lives in Pueblo. Sarah Lucas, Dante's mother, is raising all 4 kids on her own in this Colorado town set on what's called the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains. In the town of Pueblo, a 6'7" star athlete stands out.
I coached Dante Lucas in youth football. He was a coach's dream. He was a real polite kid, wanted to learn the game of football and just really quiet. Dante Lucas was super close with his mother, Sarah. On the football field, she was one of the most supportive parents. For Dante, football wasn't his sport. I'd say he's a better basketball player, which happened later in his career through high school here in Pueblo.
Dante Lucas was a very well-known basketball player. He was going to be the one who made it out of Pueblo.
He had dreams of making it big in the NBA.
It was obvious that he wanted to pursue it, but the family spoke more about it than he did. We were told by Dante's mom, Sarah, that he was getting contacted from North Carolina and Kentucky. Their dream was that he was going to make the NBA and make a good life for himself.
When I first met Dante, he was a freshman here at Central High School. He was 6'7". If you have that kind of size, you can make a lot of things happen.
It just amazed me as a guy in class that was so quiet was just as popular as he was.
He was a really good role model for the young kids in the neighborhood.
His attitude was always good. He was good with his teammates. He just matured into a very good basketball player.
His overall drive as a student from day one, it wasn't up to snuff. As a teacher, I'd try to get him involved with the rest of the class. I talked to him about that several times.
Whether it was his grades or his skill, Dante didn't get into an NCAA school, but he wanted to continue to play basketball. Dante gets recruited to Northeastern Junior College in Sterling, Colorado. He's playing basketball when he meets Kelsey Schelling, and they begin dating.
Kelsey and another one of our roommates actually went to a basketball game and were scouting out the cute boys on the team, saw Dante and decided to go up and talk, and that's how she and Dante met. By the time Kelsey got to know him and really got kind of involved, she felt proud that she knew who he was because he was somebody to know. They spent a lot of their extra free time together.
When did you first meet him?
I never met him. I saw him play basketball a couple times.
Kelsey never really said anything about bringing him home to meet the parents.
He was not committed to her by any means.
Kelsey could have had anybody, but she kind of always took attraction to people that needed help, that she thought she could turn around.
I believe that if Dante was, failing or had bad grades, that his basketball career at the school would be definitely on pause. I don't honestly think that Dante really cared to learn. Kelsey would try to help him. He would just seem very disinterested and not really care.
I think she just hoped if she was good enough to him that, he would realize that, she's the one.
I think Kelsey stayed with Dante because she found someone that gave her attention even if it wasn't the right kind of attention. And I think Dante was with Kelsey because he got money from Kelsey, borrowed Kelsey's car, basically lived a life that everyone works for but didn't have to do anything for it. Just had to be there.
There were good days in the relationship with Dante, and then it just went south. He would play with her heart. I could definitely see some bubbliness fading out as he broke her spirit.
Kelsey texts Dante, "I'm really hurt. The way you talk about me to other people is your true feelings. I guess I'm just a fool. I'm so heartbroken." Days later, Dante would respond, "My phone's been dead the past few days."
And then afterwards she'd be like, "Oh, well, he's better, he's gonna be better." And then she'd be happy.
Dante left Northeastern Junior College because he was kind of done with his studies.
After Kelsey leaves Northeastern Junior College, she lands in California, but she doesn't stay there long. Why did she decide to leave?
Mostly it was financial reasons.
Where did she go from there?
That's when she moved back to Colorado, was living in Denver in her dad's apartment, and she had started working at Floor & Decor.
When did she start going out with Dante again?
Over the holiday time frame, November, December, he would stay with her, but then he'd go back to Pueblo sometime.
Were you worried that he would come back and what that would do to her?
Absolutely. I saw what it was like before, and I didn't want that to happen to her again. She didn't want that to happen to her again, because she knew the kind of person that she became when she was with him.
How in the world did they get back together?
I don't know. She missed him, I guess.
Kelsey has a surprise for her family. She's pregnant.
She called me when she found out she was pregnant, and she was stressed, very stressed. I could tell she was scared to tell me. Just told her, "I will support you. It's going to be okay." She was happy.
Did she tell you anything about Dante's reaction?
She said he was mad.
She and Dante would be texting, and he would stop responding either during arguments that they were having. She would then get upset, wait to hear back from Dante, and left in limbo, and it was very aggravating for her.
Kelsey texts Dante, "You were my best friend. The only thing I lived for day after day. What happened to us? It wasn't supposed to be like this."
One time I'd talk to her and she'd say, he's kind of coming around and Dante will never abandon the baby.
But a child with Kelsey was not in Dante's plans.
Kelsey gets a text from Dante, and he says that he has something for her. He alludes to a surprise, and he wants her to come to Pueblo.
Kelsey had come home. When she was here, she slept a lot. I knew it was hard on her working full-time in Denver. Now with the new pregnancy, she was really tired. I said, "I will support you. Whether Dante is in the picture or not in the picture, it's going to be okay." She was happy. She wanted that baby. She wanted to be a mom.
She was in a good place.
Yes. So I'm thankful for those couple of days that we got before she went missing.
My name is Zach Hillstrom. I am a reporter at the Pueblo Chieftain. I think that people have been trying to fill in the blanks about what happened to Kelsey from the time that it happened, and not just when the mystery seemed like it might be a permanent one. On February 3rd of 2013, Dante Lucas, her boyfriend, was trying to convince Kelsey Schelling to come visit him in Pueblo that day. She responded with a firm no. It seems like they fought a lot that night. Just before 3 a.m., Kelsey texted Dante, "You don't have to be in a relationship with me. You don't have to marry me. You don't have to have a happy little family with me. You don't have an obligation to me. You're good. Don't worry. Good night." Lucas's response to that was, "Oh, I know all of that. Thanks for stating that for me."
So it was February 4th, and Kelsey had taken 3 home pregnancy tests. So she went into the doctor and had the doctor confirm to her that she was actually pregnant. She got the sonogram done. She even had the photo in hand of her sonogram. She was able to share that with her mom.
What did you think when you saw the baby?
I was happy. I knew that she was happy.
She showed up to work probably 10 minutes late. She just had her ultrasound. She was really excited. She was in a great mood that day.
That morning, Kelsey told Dante that she had finished her appointment and that her due date was September 13th. Lucas's response to that was cool. He asked her to skip work and come to Pueblo. She texted him, "I'm not going to come get you so we can fight all day." He texted back, "I don't want to fight at all. I want to give you this." She writes back, "Give me what?" He says, "Just wait and see for yourself. You probably wouldn't believe me if I told you anyway, so you can see for yourself."
Kelsey decides to go down to Pueblo after work.
She clocked out of work at a little bit after 8:40 p.m. and hit the road to see Dante in Pueblo.
So Denver to Pueblo Drive, right down I-25. It's about 2 hours long. It's just one straight path. Not a lot of people are out on the roads. It is a lonely, quiet drive. While she's driving down to Pueblo, Dante sends her a text saying, "Let's meet at the Southside Walmart." And she parks her car there.
She texted him at 10:20 saying she'd arrived, and he replied that he'd be there shortly.
She's waiting, and she's getting impatient, like any girlfriend would.
At 11:10 p.m., he still hadn't shown up to the Walmart.
That's when Dante says, "Let's meet at our spot," which is in the neighborhood of his grandmother's home, and that's where Dante was staying at the time. She moved her car there from the Southside Walmart. She was just parked on the side of the road in this residential neighborhood. So then she's left waiting there again, and she's still impatiently texting him.
The last confirmed message from Kelsey was sent at 11:18 p.m. She was asking Dante, "Where are you? I've been here for over an hour just waiting."
The following day, the 5th, she didn't show up for work. So I tried calling her, couldn't get a response. So then I shot her a text message asking her where she was, why she wasn't at work. Got a text message back right away saying that she was in the hospital having some tests done. And she said that she was not having a baby anymore, it was growing in the wrong place.
I tried calling her on Wednesday. She didn't answer her phone, which is kind of pretty rare. And then I texted her, I said, "Hey, give me a call." I got a text message back, said, "I'm not feeling good, I'm on the couch, I'll call you tomorrow."
I kept trying to call, and she wouldn't answer. Toward the end of the week, it was going directly to voicemail. So then, in the back of my mind, I'm starting to get concerned.
After Kelsey had driven to Pueblo, there was never a phone call that was answered from her phone.
Kelsey is not the type of person who would not talk to her friends. She was glued to her phone.
Friends and family would get text replies back, but they said that it came in a voice that just didn't quite sound like Kelsey. It was just short, quick responses.
Generally, any text message I had from Kelsey, words were spelled and there was punctuation, and they didn't have that.
I got to looking at the text messages and it's like, man, I don't think that was her.
Why didn't you think that was her?
Just the verbiage in it and stuff. I mean, it just didn't seem like, you know, her texting me.
Then on that Saturday morning, it's like the whole world just unraveled. All of her friends like started contacting us saying, you know, we've been trying to reach Kelsey and we can't reach her. I called Doug, her dad, and said, you know, something is wrong. And so then we all drove up to Denver that day. Went into the apartment. There was no sign of her in the apartment. And that's when we called the Denver police.
Family members were visibly upset. They were frantic, actually, almost feverishly asking for any help they could get in trying to locate her.
Did you reach out to Dante?
And I did contact him to ask him, you know, if he knew where she was.
What did he sound like on the phone? Because the call that you're making to him is, Kelsey, the woman that you are with, the mother of your child, is missing. We are desperate to find her.
Nothing, no. Not worked up, not, you know, just...
He's not scared? What can I do? How can I help?
No, he just says, if I hear from her, I'll let you know. And then a little bit later, he got back with me. He said, I heard from Kelsey. She called from a private number. She said she doesn't have her phone. And she said she'll be getting a hold of you.
Intimating that she's alive, she's out there.
And I said, well, can you track that number? And he's like, yeah, I'll try and figure out what the number was. And then, of course, he never did.
When this case first came in, I called Dante. He was telling me that he had seen her and had talked with her and spent time with her more recently than any of her family members, any of her friends. After I got off the phone, I did have a sinking feeling in my stomach. The following Friday, February 15th, that morning is when we drove down to Pueblo to turn the investigation over to the Pueblo Police Department.
We, in the beginning, were trying not to call him a suspect, just to try to build a rapport with him and try to sit down and get him to open up.
Can you kind of tell me just briefly what happened? Well, Tuesday morning, early Tuesday morning, she came down to Pueblo.
During the course of the interrogation with Dante Lucas, he reveals some pretty shocking things about Kelsey and about the baby.
To the mysterious disappearance of a Denver woman.
Pregnant woman who vanished.
Kelsey was 8 weeks pregnant.
Last seen in Pueblo, visiting her boyfriend, Dante Lucas.
So when do you start talking to Dante Lucas?
We start talking to him fairly quickly as far as what is going on.
Police bring Dante in for questioning, and immediately he denies a romantic relationship with Kelsey.
Now, is she your girlfriend, or no? We never were actually in a relationship. Can you kind of tell me just briefly what happened? She came down to Pueblo, and we're talking, whatever. You know, she ended up, getting mad at me or whatever.
Dante tells Officer Robinson that Kelsey slept in her car in Pueblo.
He said that they met up again the following morning and that he brought Kelsey Schelling to Parkview Medical Center, where she went inside.
So, went to Parkview, and she went in and stayed for about almost 2 hours, hour 45 too.
We have no record of Kelsey Schelling ever being here at Parkview Medical Center.
Now, what do you check to find out if she was here or not?
We have a medical records system that keeps track of every patient that's ever walked through our doors.
So for you, there was no way she's ever here?
That's correct.
He alluded to the fact that she may have had a miscarriage.
She came out and she told me that she wasn't pregnant.
Just the day before in Denver, Kelsey's doctor told her that the baby was healthy.
So then after we left Parkview,
Dante claimed that he and Kelsey then went to the Southside Walmart. Kelsey was going to grab some snacks before she made the drive back to Denver.
She went to go get some snacks, like something to eat, because she was hungry. And then came back out, we ended up talking, and she ended up telling me, like, get out of the car at Walmart, and she didn't want to take me home. So I just left from Walmart, started walking home, and then my mom came and got me.
But surveillance video from Walmart reveals a different version of events.
He contends that the two of them are together, and clearly, based on the surveillance, it's one person. It's him getting out of the car, and no one else exits.
When the car was parked at Walmart on February 5th, police believe that it was Daunte Lucas parking that car, getting out, and walking away. They have pretty good surveillance video showing it.
The car sat there overnight.
The morning of February 6th, this unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car, parked at the Southside Walmart, and is seen driving away with the car. We have no idea who that person was in that video.
It's a car that that person is familiar with, and we know earlier that Daunte had the key.
Who do you think that someone was that came back and drove that car away?
You know, there's similarities to Daunte, but it's nothing that we can 100% say that is the person who drove it away.
When Daunte Lucas talked with police, he didn't paint the best picture of Kelsey. He painted a picture of, just that she was kind of troubled.
She had bad anxiety, she has anxiety attacks, so she had pills for that.
What can you tell me about that?
She's told me before that she's ended up in the hospital a few times from overdosing, I guess.
Daunte cast her to police as someone who had troubles with drugs. No?
I don't believe that, no.
She just one time she told me about suicide, but she told me she ended up in the hospital behind it multiple times.
When she was 15 years old, she did. So yes, she has had that in her past. But if she committed suicide, you would find her body. I mean, she was happy. She wanted that baby. She wanted to be a mom.
So at this point, Kelsey has been missing for more than a week. But on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2013, her car is discovered.
The car of a missing Denver woman has been found in Pueblo.
Detectives will be examining Kelsey's car.
It was big news when Kelsey's car was found at St. Mary Corwin Medical Center. How did it get there? What happened to Kelsey?
I knew once her car was found that something horrible had happened, because there's just no way that she would have gone somewhere and left her car.
To find the car and no Kelsey.
And no Kelsey. We did not have any good security footage that could tell us who dropped off the car, how the car got there. Normally, if someone was going to go away for a few days, they take their car with them. So we are now leaning towards foul play. So we accelerate the case.
Police start working backwards. They start going through surveillance video, and what they find is pretty surprising. Less than 12 hours after she would have arrived in Pueblo, surveillance video shows Daunte in her car at an ATM in Pueblo. He's driving, and he takes $400 out of Kelsey's bank account.
But is it suspicious for you that he uses that card after the date where you pinpoint Kelsey was missing?
It is part of the suspicious activity, yes.
Because Daunte withdraws money from Kelsey's account without her in the car, Daunte is brought in for a second time by Pueblo police.
This is the second time I talked to you.
These detectives had a wealth of information to go at him.
Why'd you get the money? The money? What money are we talking about? 11:39 at the bank. You're on video, dude. In her car with her credit card. You're on tape. This is for the 400 they're talking about? This is for my phone bill. Why didn't she go with you to the ATM? She's not in the car. It's on the video. It may have been while she was over the hospital. Honestly, I'm not sure about like I said, my time frame has been messed up.
The detective moves on to another topic, talking about why there's no record of Kelsey ever showing up at the hospital.
There's no record of her ever being at Parkview. That's all I have to say.
Now here's the thing. Instead of pressing Daunte on these contradictions, they move on to an unrelated topic.
When she dropped you off at Walmart, where were you parked at? I mean, apparently you guys know, so, I don't understand why you, I told him one time, that's all I can say about it. When she dropped you off, when was that again? Can I speak to a lawyer, please? So if you guys keep asking the same questions over and over, I was like to speak to a lawyer.
Once he requests a lawyer, all questions come to a halt.
Unfortunately, this is a very poorly executed interview. I think it's a tremendous missed opportunity.
Once he shut down, our avenues of trying to talk to him end.
And how did you read that?
As the possibility that he knows something.
Daunte Lucas was arrested on February 15th. They don't arrest him on murder charges. He was arrested on felony identity theft charges for using Kelsey's debit card at the bank that day.
But those charges were later dropped when investigators found out that Kelsey did, on occasion, give him permission to use her bank card.
How do you prove she did not or did give him permission at that time? And since you had permission to do it before, it makes it a very difficult case to prosecute.
He's released. He's, living his life.
Do we suspect foul play? Yes. Have we come up with a body? No. Daunte is a person of interest in the fact that she's missing.
Hoping to get Daunte to talk, police bring in the person who knows him better than anyone.
Mysterious disappearance. The disappearance.
Keep us up at night. This was a story that I spent 4 years working on and reporting on.
5 years of no answers.
I wanted so badly for there to be justice in this case.
Even though Kelsey's car was found in Pueblo, Kelsey hadn't been found. Police, maintained at that time that it was a missing persons case.
When the charges of identity theft are dropped in March of 2013, police can't get Daunte to talk again.
Sit on the chair right there. I'll grab your water and we'll be back in a second.
So they take a different tact. They decide to speak to his mother, Sarah Lucas.
I would love to clear Daunte and move on. If Daunte would come in, do a polygraph, we ask him like 5 questions. If he passes that, we can move on and look other directions.
I will relay that to his lawyer, and I know my son wants nothing more than to find out what happened to her.
Detectives ask her about February 5th. That's the day that Daunte was seen on surveillance camera parking Kelsey's car at Walmart.
Did you in fact pick Daunte up?
I did pick my son up.
At that time, did you see Kelsey? Was she with him, or?
No, she wasn't with him then.
Do you know where she was?
Yes.
Sarah gives Daunte an alibi for his whereabouts on February 6th, when that unknown man is seen moving Kelsey's car from the Walmart.
On the 6th, Daunte, or somebody that looks remarkably similar to Daunte, I'm not going to say 100% was him, but went back and picked it up.
There's no way that was him. There's no way he was at home. I know my son. He's not capable of hurting anybody.
But it's been 3 years since this case happened. No one's been charged.
That's right. You have inconsistencies, lies, but without a body or any direct evidence that tells us something happened to her, to a homicide, it may happen one day, but right now it's, we haven't had any evidence to reclassify it.
You look at the Pueblo Police Department, they probably didn't have as many resources. And her family quickly became frustrated with how this investigation was progressing, or kind of the lack thereof any progress.
Kelsey's still not a victim, according to them. There's not been a criminal act committed, according to them. We just want an effective investigation done into Kelsey's disappearance.
Her family is pleading for your help.
We're doing everything in our power to find our missing loved one.
We tried to push Pueblo Police for answers. We were there for every press conference, every event. We just weren't getting any new information from them at all. And to me, that was so frustrating.
The investigation really isn't being handled properly.
Laura Saxton always been a fierce advocate for her daughter, and I don't think she'll rest until Kelsey is found.
Many in Pueblo are not giving up on finding clues that could help find Kelsey Schelling.
Why do you think people feel so strongly about Kelsey's case?
You know, they can't believe it. You know, they try and imagine what if it was their child.
We're going to break up again over here.
In May of that year when she went missing, they started doing their own searches because they didn't think police were looking hard enough.
The whole community was rallying. There were so many searches for her body all over the city of Pueblo.
This is probably one of the largest groups we've had in a while. After 3 years, that means a lot, so thank you.
Come on, kid.
People were scattering, just looking for any shred of evidence.
It's becoming harder to come back. I dread the trips, but I know I have to do it.
She comes home empty-handed. The one thing that she doesn't have is Kelsey.
They never found anything on those searches. Then those searches turned into anniversaries.
Kelsey Schelling disappeared 4 years ago this month.
And Kelsey's mother believes police are now closer than ever to finding her.
That turned into justice walks.
What do we want? Justice!
Around the Pueblo Police Department and the District Attorney's Office.
We appreciate you all so much. Your support keeps us going.
To put pressure on our system to do something here.
We're going to keep going. We're going to keep coming up with ideas. I mean, we're trying everything.
Kelsey's family offers a $50,000 reward for information.
So you feel like you're doing everything you can, even to this day, to find out what happened with Kelsey?
Yes. There is no lead we don't follow up. We followed up leads from psychics that call in. Well, they've had a vision on where Kelsey is, and we followed up those leads.
In an effort to get some more information, hopefully some tips and leads in the case, Kelsey's family also set up a Facebook page, Help Find Kelsey.
It was one source or one place where people could come together to generate information, maybe from even people that didn't want to call police.
You get a Facebook message.
It was from a woman saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous? It's so awful. He sold her into sex trafficking. I almost feel like I went insane. What if she is still out there somewhere?
We were on the ground to investigate, and I couldn't believe what happened.
Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. It's Ryan Smith, ABC News.
The car sat there overnight.
This unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car and is seen driving away with the car.
And Kelsey's just gone.
Kelsey had taken 3 home pregnancy tests.
Now, is she your girlfriend or no? We never were actually in a relationship.
The lead suspect stops talking.
Can I speak to a lawyer, please?
It's a dead end.
These are the stories that keep us up at night.
But an undercover volunteer befriends him.
I had to play the role that I didn't know what was happening, so I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what is happening?
Okay, they're both rolling now. There's a sting operation. Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. We're about 10 seconds away. Marcus Ryan Smith, ABC News. How you doing?
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down.
The anxiety level was high, the tension was high.
A witness in the Dante Lucas trial
was found shot to death. Another moment where your jaw hit the floor.
When they came and told us the verdict was in, we all were just like, oh my God.
Her mother simply won't give up on finding Kelsey. For nearly 2 years, Laura Saxton had been on a desperate search for answers about her daughter Kelsey, who suddenly disappeared in February of 2013.
There will be a renewed search for clues in the case of Kelsey Schelling.
Just through seeing Laura Saxton, the tears, the sadness, the frustration,
it all came, rolling out.
Many in Pueblo are not giving up on finding clues that could help find Kelsey Schelling.
The relentlessness of this mother's search really struck a chord with so many people in Pueblo. Scores of locals turned out to help Laura search all around the Pueblo area for any trace of Kelsey.
Over here on this other hike in 2 more groups.
The ride home is always really tough, going home empty-handed, emotionally and physically.
Is it hard to keep hope?
As far as the hope of actually finding her, that dwindles, every day.
But then, in October of 2015, nearly 2 years after Kelsey's disappearance, there's a shocking development. A mysterious message giving Laura hope comes through the Help Find Kelsey Facebook page. That's the page that Laura had set up to gather tips and leads on the case.
It was saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous?
When Laura responds, a man emails her saying, "Ma'am, please, your daughter is not dead. She will be back home alive." The man offers a harrowing account of what really happened to Kelsey. He claims that Dante hired a friend to kill her and says Dante has no idea she is alive. He thinks she is dead.
And that the friend did not kill her. He sold her into sex trafficking. It made me sick. I mean, I could barely function. What if she is still out there somewhere?
The emailer says he needs money to help Kelsey escape. $50,000 in cash. So the plan is this. The money is to be brought to Vancouver, Washington, specifically to a local McDonald's restaurant. Then it's to be hand-delivered to a guy named Marcus, who would be wearing a red hat.
Once the money was exchanged, then this courier person would go and get Kelsey and bring her back to the McDonald's. I'll have to sell some stocks, which will take about a week, but I can push to expedite that process. I just thought, what if she's been out there and I could have found her and we haven't? I mean, it was just what if?
Laura sets up the meeting at the McDonald's in Vancouver to deliver the cash. But even though she's desperate for answers, she's worried that something criminal is going on. So she reaches out to the Vancouver police and asks them to go undercover to meet this courier.
It felt like law enforcement from Vancouver should have been involved in the situation.
But just before the appointed time, the Vancouver police back out, believing it to be an internet scam and not an actual human trafficking plot. But 2020 had the McDonald's under surveillance to see if anyone would show up. Our cameras are rolling as a man with a red hat comes in.
That's him.
He sits quietly. But after no one shows up, he takes off.
Okay, you don't move. Cut the engine.
Weird, eerie to see that they actually were, going through with this.
He's gone.
It was just all a matter of trying to get down to the truth of this.
As I was investigating this mysterious email, a contact of mine told me about another missing woman's case that proved to be the key to unraveling this mystery. In Portsmouth, Ohio, 1,200 miles away from Colorado, Megan Lancaster, 25 years old, has also suddenly disappeared.
Katie Lancaster is on a mission to help find her sister-in-law.
I mean, she's gone without a trace. We have her car and her wallet.
An eerie feeling like there's something, like we're gonna find something.
Months go by with no developments. Megan's family organizes searches and sets up a Facebook page to publicize the case.
And then, out of nowhere, he pops up.
A startling message comes through the family's Facebook page about Megan.
He says, I know where Megan is, and I can get her back.
Just like with Kelsey's family, the emailer says he can help Megan escape, but he needs money, $50,000. He directs them to bring $25,000 in cash up front to Vancouver, Washington, specifically to that same McDonald's, and deliver it to a man named Marcus, wearing, no surprise, a red hat.
What if he really does have her, and I can bring her home?
You should stick with the crew, behind the camera, with the crew.
To unravel just what's going on with this mystery, Katie agreed to work with 2020 to set up a sting operation.
Katie and I are going to be in one vehicle.
just like Laura did 2 weeks earlier, she arranges a meeting to drop off the money in Vancouver at that McDonald's.
There are booths over here.
Katie, you said this morning that they sent you a text message.
They will be sending Marcus.
Okay, they're both rolling now.
I would be going to this rendezvous with Katie, but wearing a hidden camera. As we walk into the McDonald's at the appointed meet time, we quickly spot Marcus, the man in the red hat, and walk over to him. Katie was instructed not to ask any questions, so I told Marcus, hey, the money is in the trunk of a car parked outside.
Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. We're about 10 seconds away.
Meanwhile, I was waiting outside with our camera team and a security guard in case this thing went sideways.
Okay, let's get ready.
As they head out to the parking lot, before the trunk is opened, I walk over to Marcus. I want to get some answers.
Marcus Ryan Smith, ABC News. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. Why'd you come here to take $25,000 from Katie?
I don't know.
You don't know why you're here to take $25,000 from Katie?
Nope.
What are you here for?
Oh, because to collect some money.
You see, Marcus claims he was suckered too, lured online into a supposed jewelry venture. He says he was supposed to pick up the money and then wire it to someone he's never met.
So a random guy tells you to go to a McDonald's twice in less than 2 weeks to meet people to pick up money, and you don't think anything of it?
I didn't think none of it.
We were told that you were going to deliver Megan to Katie today. Is that true?
I have no idea about no Megan or no kidnapping or anything like that.
This would be a scheme to extort money from families who have family members that are missing.
I didn't know nothing of this. I had no clue anybody was supposed to be exchanging nothing for a human being. If I did know, I would not have been involved in this situation.
So you've been here twice, coming to pick up money at a McDonald's. Your name is attached to this.
Just feel shaky inside.
I had no clue.
It's important that you be real honest with me.
Yeah, I'm real honest.
You have never heard of Kelsey Schelling?
Never.
Definitely a big scam. I want to know who's behind it.
But an FBI analysis of the emailer's Facebook page showed it used an IP address traced all the way to Russia.
In most scams, they're compartmentalized. So the person you may send to pick up the cash at a particular location may know nothing about what the scam is.
Then that's just 100% clarification that, you know, this is some dirtbags out there, you know, trying to get money off of these poor families.
But while the extortion plot that was torturing Laura was laid to rest, the roller coaster ride wasn't over. A sympathetic stranger who feels for Laura comes up with a shocking plan to go undercover on her own and befriend Dante to try to find the truth about what happened to Kelsey.
I knew that I was potentially putting myself into danger.
Dante Lucas?
And when we go to get some answers from Dante, she was right there with him.
What do you have to say to her family?
Even though Laura Saxton lives hundreds of miles away from Pueblo, Colorado, the news about her years-long crusade to find her missing daughter continued to resonate with folks living there.
Our top story tonight, the search for Kelsey Schelling. Today, law enforcement following new leads in the case.
We're going to keep coming up with ideas. I mean, we're trying everything.
I felt really heartbroken for her. As a mom, I couldn't even begin to fathom knowing that your child's out there.
It's spring of 2016 when Lauren Shore, a single mom living near Pueblo, says Laura's story inspired her to hatch an audacious plan of her own. Make Facebook friends with Dante Lucas, gain his trust, and meet up with him in real life, and just maybe help solve the mystery of what happened to Kelsey.
Definitely was nerve-wracking, but I felt like I could do it. So I had messaged him on Facebook, and I told him that I was looking to meet new friends. He responded fairly quickly, within, I say, a couple of hours.
Lauren was eventually able to get Dante to meet her in person. When we shot this footage of Dante playing basketball in 2016, Lauren was there with him. She says it was only the second time they'd ever met.
We had went to a basketball court to just play around, shoot some hoops, and that's when a man with a camera came up to us.
Dante Lucas. I'm with ABC News 2020. The family of Kelsey says you're responsible for her disappearance. Is that true?
Who's Kelsey? I freaked out. I had to play the role that I didn't know what was happening. So I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what is happening? What's happening right now? And he kind of just shut down and was like, I'll tell you about it later on. Don't freak out. It's okay. None of this is true.
As the weeks go by, Lauren says she's able to develop a close relationship with Dante.
We'd just hang around the family, watch movies, drink a little bit. He always smelt of alcohol. He comes off as very cocky, I feel like. He feels like he's just the man, and he can't do no wrong.
Just as she'd planned, Lauren says she got Dante to open up, to trust her enough. The time finally seemed right to ask him about Kelsey.
There was only a certain amount of period of time that he would talk about it. 1 minute he had no involvement, he had nothing to do with it, and then he would just shut down and start crying hysterically and get really upset.
But Lauren says something very unexpected happened with Dante. Her undercover relationship with him blossomed into romance.
I felt like he did genuinely develop feelings for me and did genuinely fall in love with me. He has this way about him that makes you just feel so sorry for him. In the back of my mind, I always kept that he is potentially a murderer.
Lauren says her relationship with Dante continued for about a year, but then something happened. There was an incident outside his house that made her realize she was in way over her head.
He's like, I want you to marry me. And he showed me the ring. I took the ring. At that point, I was kind of like done, because I didn't want to get in any deeper than I had already gotten into.
Despite all the efforts of this clandestine girlfriend, her work doesn't seem to be paying off, and the clock just keeps ticking for Laura Saxton. She's not any closer to knowing the truth about what happened to Kelsey.
I wasn't happy at all with how things were going, and I mean, that's one big reason why I wanted to do the first story with you guys. Was I was hoping that that would somehow bring something out into the light.
Tonight on 2020, when do you stop looking for a pregnant daughter who's vanished?
In May of 2016, our first 2020 program on the Kelsey Schelling case hits the airwaves. The very day of our broadcast, there's a big announcement regarding the investigation into Kelsey's disappearance. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation was going to join the case.
That was news to me, so I was kind of like, oh my God, this is awesome.
I think once that 2020 special aired, it really turned up the heat on Pueblo police and on this case.
Taking over the case, Pueblo Police Department Commander Eric Bravo and CBI agent Kevin Torres. Working together, they move fast, turning it from a missing persons case into a full-blown criminal investigation.
It was a homicide investigation in our eyes, so I immediately started working on setting a plan into motion how we wanted to proceed.
Police got a tip that led them to believe Schelling's body might be in Dante's backyard.
It's not long before police dig up the yard of the house where Dante and his family had been staying.
So we thought, man, you know, we really have something. But it went from elation to satisfaction. You know, that day it just seemed like we were there, and then it slipped away.
During the investigation, Agent Torres finds out about Dante's relationship with Lauren Shore. When he interviews Shore, she reveals that Dante had made a key admission to her about Kelsey's disappearance. And it's about that Walmart surveillance video of the mystery man walking over to her car and then driving off with it.
She confirmed for us, Dante admitting it was him in the Walmart surveillance video. She also informed us that Dante admitted to her dropping Kelsey's car off at St. Mary Corwin Hospital. The piece of information that Lauren provided to us was a pretty crucial piece at that point.
Then, in late 2017, there's a huge development that will totally transform the case. A Pueblo man tells police that Dante and other family members had attacked him in front of their home and stolen $1,000 from him. Now that gives police a reason to arrest Dante.
I had information that Dante was leaving Pueblo and was heading to DIA, where he seemingly intended to board a flight to Tucson. And the concern was that he may take other efforts to meet friends in Mexico.
Boy, the anxiety level was high, the tension was high.
The time was ticking away, and the tires were turning on the road. And Dante was within 20 minutes of getting on a plane for Tucson, Arizona, when he was arrested.
When he was arrested, there was hope across the community that maybe investigators would finally get some answers in this case.
We decided that the next day would be the day that we would send a couple detectives back in to try and answer some of the questions that we didn't have answered.
During his interrogation, Dante finally breaks down and comes clean, confirming Lauren Shore's account that he was the one seen in that Walmart video.
So that information that he confirmed that was him was huge.
You see, it was that admission, combined with the wealth of evidence from text messages, cell phone records, and surveillance video already gathered, all of that was enough for prosecutors to move forward.
At the end of the day, I said, I think we have enough here to go forward. I ethically believe that Dante Lucas killed Kelsey Schilling, and I think we have the evidence to prove it.
A major development, the ex-boyfriend of a pregnant Denver woman who went missing 4 years ago. He now faces charges of first-degree murder.
How are you thinking as his trial approached? Are you thinking justice will be done?
I put a lot of things on hold because I just was, sure it was going to happen and, wanted to be ready to go.
So after 8 years, Dante Lucas is finally in court, and the prosecution has a surprise witness.
That just took the whole room's breath away. No one saw that coming. This story became such a big deal here in Pueblo because people want answers and they haven't gotten any for 8 years.
Dante Lucas, the Pueblo man accused of murdering his pregnant ex-girlfriend Kelsey Schilling nearly 8 years ago, is headed to trial tomorrow.
Did I think it was going to be a tough case? Absolutely. And we may not win it. But I owe it to the family. I think I owe it to Kelsey to go forward and try this case.
KRDO News Channel 13's Dan Beatty has been following this case and the trial for more than 2 years.
I was anticipating there to just be a mad rush of reporters who were going to try to get into the courtroom. I was very worried that I might not even get a seat. You could feel the anticipation. When I saw Laura Saxton walk into the judicial building, you could tell this was a day she's been waiting for a long time.
Denver 7's Liz Gilardi in Pueblo today for opening statements. Liz, you have been with this case every step of the way now for all these years.
The prosecution simply started out and they said, this is not a missing persons case. This is a homicide case.
The case that the prosecution was making right off the jump was, one, they were going to prove through text messages and surveillance video that Dante Lucas has to be the one responsible for Kelsey Schilling's death.
These were two people in a relationship. Kelsey Schilling became pregnant. Dante Lucas didn't want to have a baby. And he made sure that didn't happen.
I know that she had mentioned Kelsey Schilling's Chevy Cruze.
The prosecution said this car tells a story, and they told the jurors that you will see Dante Lucas moving this car around Pueblo in the days after she went missing.
The idea that someone can essentially disappear without a trace, I think, is kind of a counterintuitive thought for people to have.
Prosecutors think there's enough evidence to convict Lucas even without a body, but the defense disagrees.
In the opening statements, the defense said this is a missing persons case. This has always been a missing persons case. They said there's no body, there's no evidence. Why should you believe that Dante Lucas killed her?
They do not have a crime scene. They do not have a murder weapon.
Today, the jury got a detailed look at some of the text messages exchanged between them.
For the prosecutors, their goal was to show that those text messages showed intent, showed that Dante Lucas consistently lied, not only to investigators, but to Laura Saxton herself.
What they refer to as his luring of Kelsey Schilling to Pueblo.
The prosecution say that he lured her there to end her life.
We know that that's his phone. He admitted to those text messages. We know that that's his thoughts and feelings about it. That's direct evidence.
and the movements of their phones as well, as they were pinging off cell phone towers in Pueblo on the night of February 4th and the early morning hours of February 5th. I think that a lot of the case really centered around those movements.
2 pivotal witnesses testified at a high-profile Pueblo murder case against Dante Lucas.
First witness was Laura Saxton, and we were not expecting Laura Saxton to be the first one to take the stand. She didn't break down, but you can tell she's hurting. There's a lot of pain behind her voice.
I think that was really powerful for the jury to see. Her mom spoke to the fact that she absolutely wanted this baby.
Prosecutors today painted Kelsey Schelling as an excited mother-to-be, desperate to make it work with her boyfriend.
It didn't take long for the prosecutors to swing for the fences, calling some pretty shocking witnesses to the stand.
Ryan Rivera is a former Pueblo County inmate who considered himself to be a friend of Dante Lewis.
And when he took the stand, he said that Dante Lucas told him that they're never going to find Kelsey Schelling's body. That just took the whole room's breath away.
Ryan Rivera, he was the only person who came forward over the duration of this trial that really said, Dante told me he did this.
I wasn't in the courtroom, but well, jailhouse snitch on its face is just not credible. I mean, that's the assumption that we believe jurors have, and it's the assumption we have as defense lawyers. Why would this person do it? What's the benefit? What's the motive?
There was no deals made about charges he would get to plead to, time he would get to serve. There was no deals like that.
There were a lot of names on the prosecutor's list that I was shocked by, but Sarah Lucas certainly topped that list.
When you saw that Sarah Lucas was on the prosecution side, everyone wondered, what is she going to say?
The one important thing that I've kind of mentioned, she confirmed that Dante was the last person left alone with Kelsey.
The prosecution painted a picture of a troubled relationship.
Some of Kelsey's close friends testified. They pointed toward elements of domestic abuse in Kelsey and Dante's relationship.
Something worth pointing out was the prosecution and even the defense made it clear that Dante was using Kelsey for a number of things. For her money, Dante used Kelsey for her apartment in Denver, and Dante used Kelsey for her car. And his argument was, she lets me do it. The defense pushed the narrative that Kelsey Schelling popped pills, was an addict, that Kelsey, when she left Dante Lucas at the Southside Walmart here in Pueblo, that she was going to meet up with a drug dealer.
There's no single person, other than the defendant in 2017, who's saying that she was into drugs and that she was a party girl.
You didn't have the forensic evidence. It seemed like you were really relying on circumstantial evidence and the evidence of snitches and these other witnesses. That's pretty straightforward. Either you believe them or you don't.
The witness list yields more surprises. The ones who make it to court.
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down.
And the ones who didn't.
Witness 31-year-old Roxanne Martinez was found shot to death.
That was a completely unforeseen development in this case.
Breaking on Denver 7, a key witness in the Kelsey Schelling murder trial found dead.
That witness, 31-year-old Roxanne Martinez, was found shot to death in Denver last week.
These are still very stunning developments.
Roxanne Martinez, a witness for the prosecution, was set to testify soon.
That was just an absolutely, completely unforeseen development in this case. People were reeling when that news broke.
Denver police officers were called to a residential area in southeast Denver on a report of an unresponsive female who was lying in the roadway. We determined that that individual had been shot one time and died from that injury.
Her dad is in shock, her mom, her stepmom. It's just tragic all the way around.
I think when a witness in any major case turns up dead directly before they're set to testify, I think, of course, people are going to think, was she killed because she was going to testify?
Denver police arrested a suspect in Martinez's killing, 29-year-old Emmanuel Chandler. Chandler has been charged with first-degree murder, but he hasn't entered a plea yet.
We don't have any connection between Mr. Chandler and Mr. Lucas or anybody associated with that trial.
Our concern was to make sure that people understood that while she was an endorsed witness, I couldn't comment on her testimony.
Nobody knows what Roxanne Martinez was going to say on the stand for sure, with the exception of maybe the investigators who talked to her.
But while prosecutors say they can't discuss what Roxanne Martinez would have said on the stand, 2020 has uncovered some revealing details about her. You see, back in March of 2016, a woman named Roxanne had reached out to Laura Saxton through that Help Find Kelsey Facebook page. Roxanne messaged that she used to date the guy Kelsey was pregnant with, and he told me what had happened and started crying.
I'm instantly like mixed emotions, like, okay, are you going for the reward, or, you know, are you for real?
When Laura asked, do you know where Kelsey is located? Roxanne replied, he told me everything. Yes, I do.
Basically, her information sounded very good and very promising, and so we really wanted to meet with her.
This mysterious woman agreed to meet Laura and her husband at a Mexican restaurant in Denver.
We were actually on our way there, and I tried to reach her by phone to let her know we were coming. She said that she was in the hospital and couldn't meet us. That was kind of the extent of what I really remember. And then, you know, past that, then, you know, that was all turned over to law enforcement to look into further.
Authorities say that woman was the same Roxanne who was killed during the trial.
I can confirm that CBI followed up and interviewed her, that we did have her as an endorsed witness, that we wanted to testify during trial. The thing that I'm steering clear from is I just don't want to talk about evidence that wasn't actually admitted during trial.
Martinez's killing shakes up the trial and threatens to overshadow the testimony of another prosecution witness who had a remarkable story to tell. It's none other than Lauren Shore, that woman who befriended Dante as part of a plan to try to find out what happened to Kelsey.
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down, and that was realistically why I wanted to testify.
Shore testifies about Dante's critical admission to her, that he was the mysterious figure seen picking up Kelsey's car after it sat overnight in a Walmart parking lot.
I said, so that must have meant that you had dropped the car off at the hospital, correct? And that's when he said, yes, that was him that dropped the car off.
When the defense cross-examined Shore, they attack her credibility and her motives, at one point characterizing her as a sex informant because she had a physical relationship with Dante.
It's fair game, and if you're going to put yourself out there like she did and sleep with someone, the jury ought to know about that. You're having intimate conversations, and that casts a lot of suspicion on her as a witness.
The sex informant part really bothered me because I wasn't having sex with Dante to get answers out of him. I was playing my part and role as girlfriend. So to me, to be called such was really degrading.
On the very last day of its case, the prosecution played an interrogation video of Dante confirming Shore's account.
The clip that I played at the beginning of my closing was his phrase to detectives, "I lied from the jump. I moved the car." I wanted the jury to hear the defendant in his own words say, "I lied."
When it's the defense's turn to present its case, they raise a lot of eyebrows in court.
The defense didn't call a single witness to the stand. The defense immediately rested their case. And it was just another moment where your jaw hit the floor.
The burden of proof is on the government. It's simply messaging in a very strong way to the jury, they haven't done it. It's not guilty. So it's a strong message.
There was just really not a lot of hard forensic evidence to go off of. So as far as, you know, what evidence they put forth to court that was irrefutable, that Dante Lucas killed Kelsey Schelling, I never saw that.
After a shocking final day of the trial, the jury was going to deliberate, and I had no idea what was going to happen at that point.
I think everybody was just like holding their breath.
Prosecution and defense have given closing arguments. The jury is now deliberating.
Well, on that last day of the trial, no one expected to get a verdict that day.
So now the waiting begins.
Yes. And I was prepared to camp out at the courthouse as long as I had to. I really thought I would be there all week, and we're really totally unprepared for when they came and told us the verdict was in. I think we all were just like, oh my God.
I mean, it was shocking how quickly they arrived at their decision, especially given just the amount of information they had to look at.
I can tell you, because the decision came back so early, all of our experience as prosecutors is that this was probably an acquittal, because juries tend to come to decisions more quickly on acquittals than convictions.
It was like standing on the precipice of a cliff and looking down. It was scary.
It was a very tense atmosphere in the courthouse while everyone was waiting to hear what the verdict was.
Even I was nervous, and I'm not affiliated with Kelsey Schelling's family at all.
People were wondering, does that mean Daunte Lucas is going to walk?
I think everybody was just like holding their breath almost.
And then, when you hear the verdict, tell me how you're feeling.
Well, the words came out way too slow. Like, I feel like the judge was talking in slow-mo, even though he wasn't. I mean, I was just like, every word, it's like, okay, spit it out, please. And then he finally got to, guilty of first degree, and I think that was the first breath, like, I had taken in a long time.
This is a guilty verdict 8 years in the making, and even though Kelsey Schelling's body has never been found, the jury clearly felt there was
prison without parole.
It was just so emotional for everybody, for both sides. It's a sad story. It's a sad situation that didn't have to end up like this if he had just let her come home.
You mentioned it was a lot of emotions for both sides. Did you find yourself looking over at their side?
Daunte was sitting right in front of me. I looked at the back of his head through the whole trial. But, the mother of his child was there, and she broke down, and honestly, my heart hurt for her, hurt for their child, because it didn't have to end up this way.
Ryan Rivera's testimony was the biggest bombshell for our trial. It had moved us all. I could hear the gasps even in the masks of fellow jurors.
When it came out that he was convicted, I think there was a great feeling of not elation. You have to look at it from this side too. Mr. Lucas is a young man, and he was convicted of a criminal crime that shapes his life for however long he lives. I think it's every parent's worst nightmare that a child goes before you, and you can never fully heal that wound. I can tell you, I almost lost a child in the early 80s. And so I had a lot of sympathy with Laura and her family, because I came that close to that tragedy. And that child was the lead prosecutor on this case.
So the elected DA is my dad, and Kyle McCarthy, who was obviously on the case with me, is my husband. And I don't think, had a night in the last 4 years that we haven't gone home and talked about Kelsey Schelling. Sometimes it's the first thing we talk about when we wake up. Sometimes it's the last thing we talk about before we go to sleep.
On Saturdays when we're driving kids around to soccer, a lot of times we're being told to stop talking about it because they can hear us in the front seat talking about it.
We both also had, an incredible emotional pull to the family. That is a very special relationship, one that I will value for the rest of my life.
Well, I think, Michelle and Kyle with their closing, they're amazing. I don't even know what other words to use.
The first things that she told the reporters outside of the courthouse after the guilty verdict, yes, she was happy, but she was still devastated.
So we're very, very thankful for this outcome. But in the end, I didn't get Kelsey back. And that's what I wanted more than anything. So I feel like I didn't do something, I didn't push hard enough on something, or I didn't look enough on something to bring her home.
That devastation isn't going anywhere. Like she said, she has to live with that forever.
Her goal throughout all of this was to bring Kelsey home, give her a proper burial. So I know she had expressed that in some ways she felt like she had failed in her main mission.
I think the investigative team has some ideas where she may rest.
If that's where she is, that's just like the worst possibility to me.
That very first day that we met in September of 2016. I'll never forget it like it was yesterday, and it was just a special bond that we formed.
Kelsey's mom just battled and battled and battled.
8 years, I was hoping that it would never take this long. I grabbed my mother very tight and held her very close, holding on to my dad's hands.
Since the trial's over, it's because and Kelsey still hasn't been found, so that I've just felt very empty this past week.
Doesn't feel final because still don't know where Kelsey is, and we still don't know exactly what happened.
It turns out that prosecutors did present troubling evidence from the night Kelsey disappeared. That evidence provided a possible explanation to where her body could be.
We received information from the Pueblo landfill that there was some video evidence of a vehicle being there. You couldn't see what kind of vehicle. You couldn't tell who was in the car. Their lock to their front gate into the dump had been tampered with.
Well, it caught my attention when I grabbed the lock on my hand, and I said, well, somebody tried to get in here overnight.
The cell phone records, the pings were all out in that area. So, we suspected that's what happened.
If you heard the testimony of the landfill expert, it would be next to impossible to just find a body just by conducting a search of the landfill.
Who wants that for their child to be the final resting place? No one.
We want to bring her justice and bring her home with us, her and Kadri both. Kadri, that was the name that she was going to give the child.
I'm never going to recover without getting her back, and so I still have nowhere to go to take her flowers, to go sit and talk with her, take her balloons on her birthday, go to see her on the holidays.
Hi, Dad. Hi, Coco Bean.
How do you want her to be remembered?
A little girl with a really big heart, a really big smile, a really big laugh, beautiful eyes, silly. She was so silly. I miss being silly with her. I miss all the things that we didn't get to do together.
Nicole.
There's not enough to call it a suicide.
Tonight, 2020's investigation lighting a fire under an 8-year-old cold case.
The family's strongest argument is this abrasion.
Follow along as we retrace Annie's final hours, far from home.
So Annie might have been here on Halloween night.
No stone left unturned, doing the job they say the police didn't.
They treated this evidence like trash.
From a pastry shop.
She goes, oh my gosh, that's her. She was here.
To a funeral home.
We always thought murder right away.
The Capitol to the state penitentiary.
Our first question was, did you kill our daughter?
And finally, the police, with nothing new to say to the parents, but talking to 2020.
What do you say to this family who says you didn't do your job, that you left them hanging?
Answers for Annie.
Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Vargas. David is on assignment tonight. At a time when so many of you have your children home for the summer, these parents have a never-ending mission still trying to find out what happened to their teenage daughter, how she died 8 years after the fact. 8 years after the police say they do know what happened. What will you decide tonight? Join the conversation. We're live on Facebook and Twitter as Deborah Roberts tries to find answers for Annie.
Alexandria, Virginia, a stone's throw from the nation's capital. An upscale suburb in Fairfax County with historic cobblestone streets, pleasant homes, and top-notch schools like West Potomac High. On Vantage Drive, it was the picture of tranquility until early Halloween morning in 2008.
And then this is Annie's room.
Is it hard to come in here?
No, it's joyful because it's Annie.
It was barely 6 a.m. and Dan McCann was saying goodbye to his 16-year-old daughter, Annie, before heading off to his managerial job with TSA in D.C. His wife, Mary Jane, a former White House IT worker and now stay-at-home mom, was on her way to upstate New York to visit the couple's son, Sam, in college. Annie, a high school junior, was a passionate artist and good student who played basketball and made her mom laugh.
Annie was funny, quirky, witty.
She was just a delight. She was just a person that I feel like everybody liked Annie.
Former classmate China Johnson Owens first met Annie in 7th grade.
Annie McCann was an angel on earth, honestly.
Her parents say Annie was young for her age, sheltered and a homebody. There was no Snapchat or Instagram yet, and the McCanns heavily monitored their daughter's time online.
She could barely work a flip phone, and she just got her Facebook account.
So I said, yes, you can have the Facebook account, but I get to look at it when I want. I want the passwords, everything.
What's here that she did?
It wasn't an issue since Annie preferred drawing and painting anyway.
That is really pretty, though.
Yeah. Look at the colors.
Her work decorating the family home.
She was talented.
Very, very much so. Always put everything in a frame for her so she knew that it was important.
Her big obsession was capturing her cherished dog, Breezy Max.
She absolutely loved her dog, Breezy.
That's
and he's
painting.
At the top of.
I actually thought that was a photo for a
No.
second.
Annie's artistic touch even extended to Halloween with goodie bags she insisted on making.
She was too old to trick or treat, so she transferred her enthusiasm into giving the gifts out.
But just hours before trick-or-treaters would arrive, the first hint of trouble. Annie hadn't phoned her mom, something out of character.
Oh, she always called me like clockwork after school.
Mary Jane knew her daughter's routine. Straight home after school, and if neither mom nor dad were home, she'd call. Up in Ithaca, New York at Sam's College, when Mary Jane didn't get that usual ring of reassurance, she worried.
You know, as a mom, you just know. I got this gut. Something's not right. And so I called a neighbor. I said, are any signs of Annie? No. Any signs of the car? No.
Annie used the family's white Volvo to get to and from school.
Thoughts going through my mind. Oh my God, what if she's, and you're thinking, what if she's, oh my God, what if she's in a car accident? Please God, let her be okay.
A panicked Mary Jane calls Dan, who rushes home and finds the house phone ringing. Would it be Annie or someone who knows where she is?
I answer, and it's an automated message from the Fairfax County Public School System reporting that your son or daughter was absent today, the whole day. I almost collapsed.
So now you realize she was never even at school.
Right. So I call the police. Get over here now.
There's little to go on, and the Fairfax County officer who arrives isn't overly concerned. Maybe this is a typical teen acting out.
People were saying, don't worry, she just ran away, she'll be back. You know, kids do this all the time. It's not uncommon. Don't worry about it.
But Mary Jane is worried. Her daughter is far from rebellious and only recently had gotten her ears pierced. She's diligent about keeping them clean with the first aid spray Bactine. Keep that in mind. You won't believe how important it will be later. With no sign of Annie, her mom is frantic and begins making the achingly long 6-hour drive back home to Virginia.
What state are you in as you're driving?
I know I drove right through somebody's farm and finally got on some highway. I mean, we were like just stunned in the car and, you know, driving fast and not stopping and like, why can't I get this car home faster? We have to find Annie.
We didn't know where the hell to go. We didn't know what to do. We did the best we could.
How did you get through that first night?
I don't know.
It was torture, wasn't it?
It was torture, yeah.
But the torment is only beginning.
When the call came in, I was told it was a dead junkie behind a dumpster.
Not even 48 hours later, homicide detective Sean Jones responds to a call.
I really honestly thought it would be a 20-minute type it up and be done. Not so much.
But the call isn't in Alexandria, it's here, the Perkins Homes housing project in Baltimore, Maryland, 50 miles and another world away from the McCann's bucolic neighborhood. And behind a dumpster in this section of the so-called Charm City, a man taking out the trash makes a gruesome discovery. And it's no junkie at all. So you find the body of a white teen girl at a predominantly black housing project. What was your first thought?
That it was a homicide. It was a homicide, and we treated it as such.
Jones, a 25-year veteran Baltimore cop, knows right away this is an unusual case. When you first looked at her, was there an apparent cause of death?
No.
Did it look like she had been beaten up?
No.
The Perkins Homes covers several square blocks in a high-crime area, just minutes from Baltimore's famed Inner Harbor and Camden Yards. Soon enough, Detective Jones discovers that the dead girl has a backpack nearby and papers that reveal a stunning fact. She's not from Baltimore, not even close.
I find a hall pass for Fairfax County High Schools. I find her driver's license, and I have people back at the office call the Fairfax PD.
A half hour later, the identity is confirmed. It's Annie McCann. Detective Jones leaves the ugly crime scene, driving to suburban Virginia to break the news to the McCanns in person. How as a parent do you even...
You can't. You're in shock.
Do you ask any questions at this point, or are you just collapsed in grief?
You're collapsed in grief.
How did a sheltered girl from the suburbs wind up here? Amazingly, Annie McCann herself may have left behind the biggest clue. When we come back, the note found in Annie's bedroom. Is it a roadmap to what or who led to her demise?
She'd say, "Dear Mom and Dad." She'd never write a note not saying, "Dear Mom and Dad."
What does it reveal? See what happens next. Nightfall in Baltimore, trapped between a dark harbor and sinister sky. A city with a long history of murder and mystery ever since Edgar Allan Poe wrote and died here. Now it's the case of Annie McCann that captivates. How does a white 16-year-old girl from the Virginia suburbs wind up dead here in the projects? Her stunned parents haunted this Halloween night by a note left on their daughter's bed.
This morning I was going to kill myself, but I realized I can start over instead. If you really love me, you'll let me go.
What started as a suicide note was beginning to sound like a runaway note. Goodbye.
I know I'm only 16, but I'm almost 17. I'll be careful. That's how that note ended. I'll be careful.
Why would she run away? Was there something brewing that maybe...
Well, apparently.
But was there something possible that you could look back on and think, maybe she was upset about this?
No. Dan called me and told me, and I'm like dropping the phone like, what?
What, indeed. Equally as confounding is what they will learn later, that Annie had taken $1,000 in cash, money she'd stashed away, all her favorite clothes, even a box of Cheerios. But nothing in the note hints at where she's going.
Did Baltimore make any sense to you? Was there any connection to Baltimore?
No connection to Baltimore. No sense at all. Annie could not even find her way to Baltimore.
There were all sorts of unusual angles to this.
To Washington Post Metro writer Tom Jackman, the mysterious death of a 16-year-old girl is big news.
Beyond the fact that a suburban girl was found dead in the inner city of Baltimore, there's no real explanation for how she died.
You don't see this very often.
No.
It wasn't the usual bill of fare for Baltimore homicide detective Sean Jones either.
90 to 95% of the cases we're dealing with are African-American males that are shot on a street corner. I'm obviously going to look at this twice and not just glance over it as your average everyday case.
Then the case seems to crack like one of those famous Maryland crabs. First, police find Annie's Volvo abandoned at a gas station. Then, a tiny clue, a smudge. It's a fingerprint that matches someone already in their database. Could it be Annie's killer?
We had to get the fingerprint processed, and then once we got the name back from the fingerprint, that's when we moved on that.
Turns out the print belongs to a teen boy who says he and some friends came across the car in the projects. He says Annie, face down in the back, is already dead. So, as twisted as it sounds, they dump her body and go joyriding in her car.
So these boys just dumped her body?
Yes, ma'am.
And took the car?
Yes, ma'am.
One young man connected to the group, Darnell Kinlaw. Remember that name because you'll hear it again. But police don't charge him or anyone with assaulting Annie, in part because of the condition of her body. They're certain Annie was not beaten, strangled, stabbed, or shot.
When I initially met the McCanns, I made it very clear that I didn't know what we had, and that the autopsy, 99.9% of the time, is going to give us more clarity on what we're dealing with.
Then the autopsy results are in, and they're a surprise to everyone. Annie had a small amount of alcohol in her blood, but a large amount of something else. Lidocaine.
Lidocaine.
Lidocaine?
100 lidocaine?
It's a drug you may have heard of on those medical shows like Grey's Anatomy.
Nasal speculum and lidocaine.
To finally relieve your pain, now's the time for lidocaine.
It's also a common numbing agent in all kinds of over-the-counter products, including Bactine.
Relieves pain on contact. Bactine.
The antiseptic Annie had for her newly pierced ears.
Did you even know what Bactine was at that point?
Yeah. I have kids myself. I knew exactly what it was. And I knew what the active ingredients were.
But it's there in black and white. Annie died of lidocaine poisoning. Back at that gas station, crime scene investigators find what in any other case might be an innocuous piece of trash. But now Detective Jones considers it a smoking gun.
We found near the car a Bactine bottle that had the lid removed. It's not a screw-top bottle. It's something that requires a little bit of force to get off.
And Annie's DNA is discovered on the exposed part of the bottle. The medical examiner who did the autopsy won't guess how the lidocaine got into Annie's system, calling it undetermined. But the seasoned detectives have no doubt it's suicide.
But who kills themselves with Bactine?
People kill themselves. I've been in homicide for 15 years, and they get very creative. And this is just one of those methods.
To the authorities, this was a pretty open and shut case. She died of a lidocaine overdose. Problem is, it's so rare to find that someone died of that kind of overdose that it's going to lead to some questions.
This doesn't add up. This can't be. This is what you came up with, that she drank a bottle of Bactine?
And the McCanns are taking notes on other things that don't add up.
It was sound of the Baltimore police to consider suicide. It is reprehensible to conclude suicide.
They don't buy it, as they explain in an article they later write. If Annie was going to kill herself, they ask, why go all the way to Baltimore to do it? And if she drank that Bactine, why did the police not find her fingerprints on the bottle?
Her prints and our prints should be all over that bottle. Who wipes fingerprints while killing themselves?
And who writes a to-do list like Annie did on her hand if they're planning to end it all, reminding her to do her chores and say her prayers?
We thought it was a baffling mystery. Nobody's heard of anybody overdosing on Bactine, much less a kid from the suburbs who didn't seem to be that unhappy with life. And so we continued to press forward with the story.
And the story was far from over. When we come back, the McCanns are about to get disturbing new details about their daughter's death, not from detectives or the medical examiner. Try the funeral director and why she thinks suicide is out of the question.
We always thought murder right away.
You thought murder right
did.
away?
We did.
It's a ritual no parent should ever endure. Dan and Mary Jane McCann buried their daughter Annie a week after her death in this cemetery not far from their Virginia home.
Please, get Annie justice, please, please, please.
But no one is resting peacefully. In a curious and cruel blunder, the McCanns say the medical examiner's office failed to restore 2 of Annie's organs after her autopsy.
Your daughter's heart and brain were not returned to her body?
No.
How is that possible?
I don't know. You tell me.
The McCanns are outraged. They say it's unheard of and wonder if the medical examiner could somehow lose their daughter's heart and brain. What else was botched? That's where Diane Downey comes in. We tracked her down at this Alexandria funeral home where she spent 25 years preparing bodies for burial. She says she was unnerved after receiving Annie's.
What did you think?
There's absolutely no way this was a suicide with all the trauma on her body.
Trauma? Dan and Mary Jane say police told them there was none. So what about the goose egg-like bruise on Annie's forehead? So unsightly the McCanns hesitated over an open casket.
I kept going back to the detectives, but they kept dismissing it as, no, they were just minor abrasions.
They were told minor abrasions, no evidence of an assault. And they see this. And so now they're probably really thinking there's something more here.
Downey was reluctant to share her suspicions with the grieving family. But the McCanns' heartbreak and bewilderment only grew much later when they would get their daughter's autopsy photos.
And I know these are hard for you to look at.
They're convinced they see a cigarette burn on her forehead, a mysterious letter J on her ankle, and worst of all, they think they see signs of a sexual assault.
I was horrified. It's like, oh my God, my daughter was tortured.
The McCanns suspect that their daughter is a victim of a crime, especially when that funeral director points out what she sees as another bizarre detail: Annie's fingers. It looks to her that they're wilted.
Her fingers were shriveled like they were raisins, like her body had been soaked for several hours.
Did that concern you?
Very much.
Was this a result of someone trying to wash away evidence?
Baltimore City Police will not reopen its investigation.
The case is closed.
Police may be standing down, but the McCanns are only ramping up their own investigation, and the media is all over the story.
The McCanns have made it known they were not happy with their daughter's death investigation.
And the parents are relentless.
The police do nothing and they sweep it under.
Baltimore police never honestly investigated Annie's death.
They begin emptying their savings, even Annie's college fund, to get at the truth, buying billboards around town, and then assembling their own dream team, starting with perhaps America's most famous medical examiner, Dr. Michael Baden, a fixture on Fox News.
You looked through the materials. What struck you right away?
What struck me right away was the circumstances first, that she was found by a dumpster. Somebody dumped the body there after death, and usually that happens in homicidal situations.
Baden says in 50 years of death investigations, he's never heard of anyone killing themselves by drinking Bactine. And in his opinion, there wouldn't be enough lidocaine in one bottle to kill Annie anyway.
So you were convinced that Annie McCann did not commit suicide by drinking Bactine?
That was my opinion, yes.
That's when it went, for me personally, it went, holy cow, she was murdered.
Still, no change in posture for the Baltimore police.
If you come across being angry, no one's going to help you. You come across, if you're nice, no one's going to help you.
Disappointed and desperate, the McCanns march on, all the way, in fact, up to Capitol Hill.
This committee
to Senator Charles Grassley, one of the country's most powerful members of Congress, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee.
If I can help, I want to help.
From Iowa, he isn't even the McCann senator, but they don't call him Hawkeyes for nothing.
Do you think the Baltimore PD blew it?
It looks to me like when they don't answer questions, they raise a lot of unnecessary suspicion. And if they want to avoid this suspicion, then it's pretty simple. Just come clean.
Grassley sent off official letters to the Baltimore police and the FBI. They wrote back defending the investigation and stand by the conclusion Annie most likely died from self-ingestion of Bactine. But Grassley also wrote to the makers of Bactine, the Bayer Corporation, and got another story entirely.
What exactly did you hear from Bayer about lidocaine?
Pretty simple, that one bottle of Bactine would not cause a suicide.
In fact, Bayer claims it previously told the Baltimore police the same thing.
Back in here.
Her body was found back in here?
Yep, right in here.
Which leads us to this man, the captain of the McCann Dream Team.
It's not your usual death. This is a mystery that stumped everybody. I mean, there's other
Jim Consis, a private eye and former Baltimore cop himself, now on Annie's trail.
Her name's Annie, white girl from Virginia. No, no her.
He retraced his steps with us,
I canvassed the whole area, went door to door for months.
literally walking me through his investigation.
Hey guys.
Approaching anyone and everyone he could, like these folks at the Perkins homes.
So we're just trying to fill in the blanks on how the body got behind the dumpster.
But have you ever heard of anybody talking about the case? No?
Did you hear any scuttlebutt about it when you moved in? Like
No.
What might have happened to her?
No.
Then hitting the road.
Now we're getting in the heart of Fells Point.
So Annie might have been here on Halloween night.
Yeah, she could have been.
The key for Consis, determining where Annie was after leaving home and with whom.
What would this area be like on Halloween?
Packed. Because all the bars are down there.
In fact, Fells Point is one big party on Halloween, with throngs of young people celebrating and taping the festivities. This footage shot the very night Annie disappeared. Consis says Annie may have been among the revelers. Then a big moment on this quiet block of Albemarle Street.
This is basically Little Italy. You got all the Italian restaurants here.
He arrives here, Vaccaro's, a Baltimore bakery famous for its pastries. When we come back, a very sweet clue, and the trail doesn't end in that bakery. Who are the McCanns about to question inside this prison? Stay with us. Vaccaro's pastry shop is a landmark in Baltimore's Little Italy.
He wants an espresso.
Famous for cappuccino and cannoli, it would become the setting for a stunning development in the case of Annie McCann.
What brought you here?
I know she had a sweet tooth, and her body was found over there. And she loved yogurt, pastries, and I'm thinking, why not take a shot?
It's 3 months after Annie's death, and the McCann family private investigator Jim Consis is showing Annie's picture to workers here.
So you came up to the counter here?
Yeah, I came up to counter.
A clerk takes a look at the picture.
One guy goes, "Oh yeah, I think I remember her. Yeah, she was cute."
Then a server sees the photo, and it's as if someone dropped a pile of dishes.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! I can't believe it. That's her.
Remember her?
She was here.
Here, alive and well, sipping a cappuccino with extra whipped cream. Then a jaw-dropping revelation. Annie was not alone.
Yeah. She was with another girl. And then that's when the description came out.
A sketch artist is soon giving that description a face.
So you got the server here to give you the details to come up with the sketch.
Right, and then once the sketch was complete, she looked at it and she says, "That's her."
This is Annie's companion, according to a waitress. A haunting image of a tall, dark-haired woman, older than Annie, late teens, early 20s, disheveled, tired, looking like trouble.
She had heavy makeup. She had the ugliest fingernail polish you would ever see. It's puke yellow. Puke yellow. She had heavy-duty bags underneath her eyes, like she was tired.
As a detective, what's going on in your head at this moment?
I'm thinking, oh, that's good. I got a hit.
So you thinking this woman could be the key to solving this death?
Right.
This is big stuff, isn't it?
No, it ultimately does not have anything to do with Annie's death.
Sean Jones, the lead Baltimore detective on the case, says they looked into it, and he is not impressed. Not by the sighting of Annie, not by the mystery woman with her.
But if she's sitting and having coffee or a dessert with a disheveled young woman, that doesn't set off any bells for you?
Of course it does. It's important, but ultimately we weren't able to verify that it even happened.
The McCanns also released this sketch of a woman seen with Annie in Little Italy the day before her death.
The McCanns publicized the sketch, hoping someone will recognize the girl with puke-colored fingernails, one person who might possibly be able to shed light on their daughter's death. There have been many leads over the years, but they've never been able to track her down.
Every time they would find a lead, then they, hit a dead end, and it's like the mystery continues.
Just when many might have given up, the case of Annie McCann takes another strange turn. Nearly 3 years after her death, a murder with what seemed to be eerie parallels makes the news in Baltimore. 26-year-old Lakeisha Player is murdered and her car stolen. When police name the killer, the McCanns are flabbergasted.
Police believe the killer is this man, 21-year-old Darnell Kinlaw.
Darnell Kinlaw is accused of murdering Lakeisha Player in her Kentucky Avenue home this month and stealing her car.
The same Darnell Kinlaw previously questioned in Annie's case, and who the McCanns believe had been involved in tossing their daughter's body and taking her Volvo on that joyride.
That same guy then gets arrested for murdering someone and taking their car. It's a big coincidence.
Annie's case comes roaring back into the headlines.
The arrest was of 21-year-old Darnell Kinlaw for the murder of his girlfriend. Kinlaw was eventually charged with the unlawful taking of Annie McCann's car in 2008.
Awfully close to the same kind of circumstances.
I'd argue otherwise. He shot her and stole her car in a domestic incident. Has no similarities to Annie's case.
Do you think he knows more than he's told you?
No. As a matter of fact, I think that it tells the opposite, that if he were to murder someone, he's going to use a gun. He's going to use the standard method, and that he's not going to poison someone with lidocaine.
For years, the McCanns have wanted to question Kinlaw themselves, convinced they might be able to get something more out of him about Annie's death. Now, on a gray June day, nearly 8 years after Annie's death, they will get their chance. Kinlaw has surprisingly agreed to meet with them. Dan and Mary Jane leave their Fairfax County home for the nearly 3-hour ride across Maryland.
Are you nervous?
No.
Oh, yeah. Because I know that we might not get anything.
Yeah, that's what I fully expect. They might accidentally tell the truth or do it on purpose. We're going to interview one of what we believe are 5 thugs, at least 4, and we believe 5, who dumped Annie's dead or dying body from her car and then took the car for a joyride. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses.
Praying as they drive and strategizing.
We want to know the circumstances under which he found the car, found Annie. Had he seen her before? Had he seen her with anybody else? And can he please find it in his heart to help us find out who, not him, murdered our beautiful daughter.
Coming up, are the McCanns face-to-face with their daughter's killer? Does Darnell Kinlaw have answers about Annie? Watch what happens next.
"2020 continues with Answers for Annie."
Dan and Mary Jane McCann drive 150 miles across Maryland, doing the kind of detective work they say the Baltimore police are not. They're going to question Darnell Kinlaw, a young man they believe was involved in dumping their daughter's body and joyriding in her car in Baltimore nearly 8 years ago. Kinlaw's now doing 30 years for murdering his girlfriend, Lakeisha Player, and taking her car.
That takes a lot of guts. For these parents to walk into a maximum security prison and sit down and interview a man who they think may have killed their daughter?
He was on the other side of thick glass.
And
we could hear each other very well.
They make small talk with the killer and even pray together.
And I said, Darnell, I take it from your letter, you're Christian. And he said, yes. I said, would you mind if we started with a prayer? And he said, no. And he joined us.
Then Dan gets down to brass tacks.
Our first question was, this is maybe the hardest question we're going to ask you, DJ, or maybe the easiest. Did you kill our daughter? No. You know, we had to ask, okay.
They say Kinlaw seemed genuinely upset at times, but as he looked into their heartbroken faces, they say he offered nothing that would end their misery.
Nothing. So we've worked a long time to get to see Darnell Kinlaw. Finally got to. And we got pretty much what we expected, which is nothing. We learned that he knows almost nothing about Annie's death.
Weary after struggling nearly 8 years now to prove that their daughter didn't take her own life, the McCanns' anger toward the Baltimore police is as raw as ever. We questioned lead detective Sean Jones about the McCanns' accusations, and we also confronted his boss, Colonel Stanley Branford. The McCanns
say that the Baltimore Police Department took the easy way out. By labeling this a suicide, they were able to wash their hands of it and move on to another crime.
I'm sorry that they feel that way, but that's simply not the way we approach this case. I can tell you that this case has been thoroughly investigated, not only by us, by the FBI, that we asked to come in and evaluate our investigation.
Doesn't this family deserve more answers?
We've given them all we can give. We cannot provide answers that we do not have. We possibly believe that Annie McCann committed suicide.
Suicide. But this is a girl who lived in the suburbs. Why would she drive 50 miles to a housing project in Baltimore to commit suicide?
Well, that I can't answer because I don't know the mindset of Annie at that time.
But police do share stunning evidence with us the McCanns did not. We already knew about the letter Annie wrote saying she was going to kill herself and changed her mind. But now police revealed their investigation found other notes in which Annie talks about suffering with anorexia and depression. She writes to a friend, "My suicide has nothing to do with you." In another note, "Pressure has gotten to me. I can't do it anymore." And no one blamed themselves for this. "This is all on me."
In all of her writings, she had indicated that she was leaving, and she expressed to some degree that she was tired of living.
In response, the McCanns insist Annie did not intend those as suicide notes. One was found crumpled up under her bed, the other partly crossed out.
Now, my heart goes out to her parents. We have responded to every request that they made. We responded to every piece of information that came in.
After 1,200 hours on the case, the Baltimore Police Department stands by its belief that Annie took her own life by drinking Bactine. It's a critical question at the core of Annie McCann's death. Is there enough lidocaine in a single 5-ounce bottle of Bactine to kill a 16-year-old girl? The McCanns' medical experts are at odds with the Baltimore ME. So 2020 contacted Dr. Bill Mannion, a board-certified forensic pathologist. He estimates he's determined cause and manner of death in 2,500 cases over the years, but not one of them involved Bactine or lidocaine.
Bactine, I had never heard of that before. To be honest, I didn't know it was capable of killing you, but it is capable because it has lidocaine in it, and lidocaine is a toxic drug.
He says a bottle of Bactine does contain a potentially fatal dose of lidocaine.
Yes, there is enough in a bottle of Bactine to kill someone. Even in a half a bottle, they're roughly 2 grams, and that would be enough to cause death.
Even the McCanns' own expert, Dr. Bodden, says some of their worst fears about what happened to their daughter are unfounded. The funeral director felt convinced that she saw signs that Annie might have been sodomized. Did you see any indication of that in either the photos or in any of the material you reviewed?
No, I didn't. Well, I don't see evidence that she was sexually assaulted.
As for that distinctive-looking letter J on Annie's ankle, Dr. Bodden says it may just be an accidental pattern from blood settling.
It was the way the lividity, the blood settled in the body after she had died.
So you don't think that was a marking, a letter, or some kind of a tattoo?
That's correct.
You don't think so?
I do not think so.
There's also some talk that there may have been a cigarette burn on her head.
But I don't think it was a cigarette burn.
You don't think that was another sign of some kind of abuse?
No.
On one of our visits with the McCanns, they show us bins of evidence they say the police returned to them.
How long has it been since you've gone through these things?
Years.
And there, among Annie's things, a discovery that seems to surprise even her parents.
Shouldn't take that money.
Digital camera.
Her digital camera still sealed in a police evidence bag. Is it possible this has gone untouched and unnoticed for nearly 8 years? Mary Jane plugs the memory card into a laptop. When we come back, what Annie's camera saw. Stay with us. Nearly 8 years after Annie McCann's strange death in Baltimore, her parents do something they say they've never done before. Search the memory card of her camera, stored among evidence in their garage. This is what they find. 14 photos, apparently taken by Annie.
It says May 2008.
But the pictures couldn't be more innocent. Later, Baltimore police tell us they checked that camera years ago. Yet another disappointing dead end. But the McCanns are determined to keep fighting.
Her death needs to be changed to homicide.
The McCanns feel that the Baltimore PD botched this case. Did you botch it?
No, ma'am. Not at all.
What if you're wrong? What if there's a murderer out there and you missed it?
I'm not.
You're convinced that this is a suicide?
Yes, ma'am.
No doubt in your mind?
None whatsoever. There is absolutely no evidence to indicate that this is a murder.
Recently, Mary Jane took another road trip. An emotional journey to Baltimore.
We're going to go meet Wanda Player. She's just a really very special lady.
That special lady Wanda is Lakeisha Player's aunt. The McCanns bonded with her when the two families were attending court appearances for Lakeisha's killer, Darnell Kinlaw.